Let the record reflect, we have reconvened with all members present. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I ask you to remain standing after the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. As we often do at the beginning of the meeting, we recognize longtime Madison residents who we lost over the past few weeks. Tonight, we remember members of our Borough family. Vito Lupino Jr. passed away unexpectedly on Wednesday evening at the age of 54. Vito was a lifelong resident of Madison, 1986 graduate of the Madison High School, where he excelled as an athlete in football, baseball, and wrestling. Vito was a 26-year employee with the Borough of Madison and was currently serving as foreman of the sewer department. He was very proud to dedicate his life's work to his hometown. And as foreman, he cherished the many friendships he forged with many of his colleagues. Vito was survived by his three sons, Vito III, Dominic and Joseph, and one daughter, Ashley, his mother, Dorothy, two brothers, four sisters, and three grandsons. In addition to his dedication to his work with the Borough, Vito coached football and wrestling at Madison High School and Bailey Elder High School. He was a longtime Madison Little League coach, president of the Madison Junior Football. He was also very proud of the impact he had on all those he coached. Two things I learned recently about Vito that I never knew. One, that he was a great cook, often sharing his recipes with others, and that he was known to have a very clean desk, something that will never be said about me. So everyone knows, the visitation for Vito is tomorrow, the 27th, from 4 to 9 at Madison Memorial Home, and this service will be Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. at St. Vincent's. And then on September 23rd, one other thing, I had ordered the flags to be lowered to half staff in Vito's memory on Wednesday. Of course, this will coincide with lowering flags for Governor Florio. Great loss to our state. On September 23rd, Carmen Granado passed away at his Madison home, living 88 years, born in Morristown, but a longtime resident of Madison. Carmen, better known as Buddy, had retired from the Madison Police Department as Detective Lieutenant, having joined the force with badge number 44. He was raised in Morristown, the youngest of 12 older siblings. In addition to his parents and siblings, Carmen was preceded in death by his wife of 60 years, Helena. He is survived by one daughter, Lenora, and one son, Christopher, and two granddaughters. Carmen initially worked with Public Service Electric and Gas as a pipe installer before joining the Madison Police Department as a patrolman. He served the community with distinction, earning awards for bravery and service throughout his career. He worked his way up the ranks to lead the Detective Bureau before retiring. He was a proud graduate of the Federal Bureau of Investigation National Academy in December 1982. Also an accomplished private pilot, he worked as an aerial photographer for multiple counties and state agencies. Carmen held the rank of distinguished expert and represented Madison Police Department in competitive pistol matches held all over the country. He built the Madison Pistol Range and was responsible for training both Madison and Florham Park Police Department police officers. A memorial service for Carmen will be held on Sunday, October 23rd, from a memorial visitation from 12 to 4 at Madison Memorial Home. So let us take a moment to remember Vito Lupino and Carmen Buddy Granado, and let us pass our thoughts on to the families and friends that they leave behind. Thank you. Have a motion for the regular minutes of September 12th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Already have been discussed. All in favor?
Aye.
And a motion for the regular minutes of September 12th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, corrections, or changes? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Welcome all. A big crowd tonight. And I want to welcome a couple of special guests. State Senator Anthony Bucco, thank you for joining us tonight. This is like, I think, fourth or fifth time Senator Bucco and I have been in the same room. I'm getting a little suspicious. And we also have Mayor Woody Kirkeslager. Woody, thank you for joining us tonight. And of course, we are in Rosh Hashanah, began last evening. So to all of our Jewish friends, I wish you all a Happy New Year. And a few updates before we get to a few proclamations. At our last meeting, I mentioned that we were still waiting for a full ruling from Superior Court Judge Stephen Hansberry regarding Drew University's challenge to our affordable housing settlement. As he stated at the August 19th court hearing, Judge Hansberry ruled in our favor and kept our settlement intact. He did rule, however, that the developable portion of the 53-acre Drew Forest should be reviewed as for possible revision of the Madison's affordable housing obligation known as Realistic Development Potential, as we know it as RDP. But please keep in mind, it would not require Madison to change the campus zoning or even permit any obligation to be built in the forest. Drew will be providing Madison with a survey to accomplish this task. In the meantime, we have had contact with Drew on reopening discussions to preserve the forest. We are committed to saving the forest, as I've said multiple times. While Drew was not ready to meet the 2022 Morris County Open Space Funding Cycle timeframe, we will be pushing them to meet the 2023 deadlines. Of course, there will be more to come on that. And there is also a lot of events in the last few weeks. On Friday, September 16th, many gathered at the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts to honor Councilwoman and volunteer extraordinaire Maureen Byrne. State Senator Bucco was there also. With me from the council were John Hoover, Deb Cohen, and Eric Range, and many of the community came out to support the museum and recognize Maureen not only for her support of the museum, but for our community as a whole. And I was able to speak and was honored to recognize Maureen for her dedication as a volunteer, as I said, guided by her sense of care. The dedication that rose from her dedication rose from her desire to give back to Madison community, a community that supported her in a time of need. Maureen, congratulations on a very well-deserved recognition. And on Sunday the 18th was a very busy day with the celebration with the 50th anniversary of EPIC, originally known as Education Programs of Children Handicapped, now known by its acronym EPIC. They were founded in 1972 to provide after-school programming to students with developmental disabilities, and after a long time running programs at the Y, they are now based out of the community house. And then later in the day, it was the Chabad of Southeast Morris County's dedication of the Torah. The Torah, with over 300,000 letters that was handwritten in Israel and brought to the United States. The celebration included scribing letters for families, followed by a celebratory march through the downtown to the Art Center for a buffet celebration. And on the 22nd, I attended the open house for Wind of the Spirit. Many of you are aware of their work. Wind of the Spirit has been serving immigrants and others needing support for over 22 years. All this time, their offices were in Morristown while they delivered programs to many towns, including Madison, through their outreach programs. They have now moved their offices to 2 Green Village Road, right in the James Building. So please stop by and say hello. And then this past Saturday, I got to grill 200 hamburgers and 200 hot dogs for the second annual Madison Police First Baptist Church Block Party. It was another great success. An amazing turnout from the community, and it appeared that everyone enjoyed the food, including the bees. So be forewarned for Bottle Hill Day, be ready. They are out there. And council members Maureen Byrne, John Hoover, and Deb Cohen also joined the gathering. And then shifting gears, I got an email from one of our residents, Joy Soprano, who plays the mother on Best Foot Forward, which is streaming on Apple Plus. It is a new family-friendly TV comedy based on a true story and the book Just Don't Fall by Josh Sundquist. And the show centers around a little boy who has one leg, and it follows his journey through the struggles as special needs students face while attending public middle school for the first time. Joy's son attends Kings Road Elementary School, and in light of the television show's success and positive message, she was asked to do an assembly about the show to teach students awareness and inclusion in the special needs community. So she will be joined by her TV son and the star of Best Foot Forward, Logan Maramino, and that will be coming up next week. So keep your eyes open for that. It's great to have residents giving back in our community. And lastly, before I get to the proclamations, we have another Madison star to recognize, retired New York Jet Nick Mangold. He spent his entire professional career with the Jets, retiring in 2016, and at yesterday's Jets game against the Bengals, Nick was inducted into the Jets Ring of Honor, joining such greats as Joe Namath, Don Maynard, and Freeman McNeil. So if you see Nick around town, and if you see him, you can't miss him, you congratulate him. Here. A few proclamations to present. A couple from here and then two from down below. First one is recognizing National Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. And Rachel Sackett regretfully could not be here to accept this, but let me read this to help you understand the importance of ovarian cancer awareness. Whereas this year, nearly 20,000 women in the United States will be diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and whereas ovarian cancer is the deadliest of all gynecological cancers, with the risk of developing ovarian cancer increases with age. Ovarian cancer does not always present itself with early symptoms, meaning the diagnosis does not occur until the disease has reached an advanced stage, and whereas when detected early, a 5-year survival rate of patients with ovarian cancer is more than 90%. However, only 20% of ovarian cancers are diagnosed at this early stage. And whereas there's no reliable early detection for ovarian cancer, and whereas lives can be saved through increased public awareness of ovarian cancer and its risk factors, signs, and symptoms. Whereas this month is dedicated to prevention and awareness to honor those we have lost, to show support for women who bravely carry on the fight, and to take the action to lessen the tragic toll ovarian cancer takes on families across this country. Now, therefore, I, Robert H. Conley, Mayor of Borough of Madison, on behalf of the governing body, hereby recognize September 2022 as Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month and call upon citizens, government agencies, private businesses, healthcare providers, research institutions to raise ovarian cancer awareness and continue helping women live longer, healthier lives. And this next proclamation, we don't have anyone to accept it, but I'm going to do something a little bit different at this point, is for all those that either personally have been diagnosed with breast cancer or have a close friend or relative that have been diagnosed with breast cancer, please stand. I think this truly shows the importance of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas the Borough of Madison values health of all its residents, and whereas beginning in 1985, October has been designated as National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and whereas lifetime risk for developing breast cancer is 1 in 8 for women and 1 in 833 for men, and whereas breast cancer is the second most common cancer diagnosed in women and also ranks as the second cause of cancer death in women, and whereas certain factors put women at a higher risk than others, including age, personal or family history of breast cancer, specific genetic mutations, or dense breast tissue. And whereas with a routine mammogram screening and follow-up testing, breast cancer can be detected early when it can be more effectively treated. And whereas there are more than 3.8 million breast cancer survivors in the United States, including women still being treated. Now, therefore, I, Robert H. Conley, Mayor of Borough of Madison, on behalf of the governing body, do hereby proclaim October 2022 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month in recognition and support of the patients, families, and professionals leading the fight against breast cancer, and reaffirm our commitment to supporting breast cancer research and to educating all citizens about its risk factors, detection, and treatment. Thank you for all standing. In previous years, I've shared the story of my mother, who I give credit for the fact that I'm sitting here today, as she got me involved in politics at a very young age. About 50 years ago, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and in a much different time. I think the diagnosis came late. The treatment was not where it is today. We lost her 5 years later to liver cancer. So I know all of you in the room who just stood what this means, and we will work together to raise awareness and support research. I'm going to get the microphone and come down.
They're here, Mike.
Yeah, one right. Yeah.
Kathy Daly, Julius Crimmins, please come forward. Thank you for joining us tonight. And this is a proclamation for Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. Certainly another area that touches us all. Whereas pregnancy and infant loss affects approximately 1 in 4 families, and whereas this devastating tragedy often occurs suddenly and without warnings as a result of miscarriage, ectopic pregnancy, stillbirth, preterm birth, sudden infant death syndrome, accident or other causes or complications. And whereas observing a month for remembrance for pregnancy and infant loss will provide some comfort for those suffering loss due to miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant death. And whereas bereaved parents and families require support and understanding during the time of grief. And whereas New Jersey is committed to improving maternal and infant health care, and the latest initiative is the launch of Teen Birth NJ, which is evidence-based national model for better communication between provider and patient. And whereas promoting awareness of pregnancy and infant loss not only increases the likelihood that grieving families will receive understanding and support, but also results in improving education, prevention efforts, which will ultimately reduce the incidence of these tragedies. Now, therefore, I, Robert H. Connolly, Mayor of Borough of Madison, on behalf of the governing body, hereby proclaim October 2022 as Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, and encourage parents, caregivers, and all residents to become educated in the opportunities to prevent pregnancy and infant loss and support bereaved families when prevention is not possible. Thank you for spreading the awareness and accepting this proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor Conley. Thank you, members of the Borough Council, for this proclamation. And Julia and I are honored to accept it on behalf of the entire Madison community, and also in memory of Helen and Bill Prentice. Many of you knew Helen and Bill, and many of you know their daughter, Kathy Ross, who still visits Madison often. Helen and Bill were longtime Madison residents. They lived most of their lives here and died in 2017 at the ages of 90 and 92, respectively. When Helen and Bill were still in their 80s, they spoke openly with me and my husband about the baby boy that they had held too briefly and another child whom they never got to hold at all. They talked about their heartbreaking losses with the wisdom and perspective that can only be gained through time and experience. What struck me most of all during that very memorable conversation is that they both expressed the same love for Kathy's siblings, including the baby that they never had a chance to hold, as they did for Kathy. They had as much love in their hearts for each of their babies who died so early in life as they did for their one child who lived. I learned from Helen and Bill, as well as from personal experience, that it can take decades sometimes for a family to make sense of this kind of loss. Due to the unique and difficult nature of this grief, it's rarely discussed, even many years after a family experiences it. Families often feel alone as they face their heartbreak. Even when they do share what happened to their child, it's so easy for us to say the wrong thing that so many people just choose to say nothing at all. But I assure you, if you know a bereaved family who's facing the tragedy of having lost a child during pregnancy or as an infant, it can mean a lot to simply acknowledge their grief. So each of the churches here in Madison and our 2 local funeral homes, they're all equipped to direct families to grief support resources. Also, Julia and I, during the month of October, and some others, will be asking our Madison churches to join in the International Wave of Light. I don't know if you know what the International Wave of Light is, but each year on October 15th, around the world, people light candles to commemorate all babies who sadly died too soon. So it works this way, as it's a wave across the entire world. Between 7 and 8 p.m. on October 15th, there will always be, in each time zone, a candle lit or candles lit for these babies. So thank you, Mayor Conley, and thank you, Madison Borough Council members, for lending official recognition to pregnancy and infant loss during October. Thank you for helping to raise awareness about the grief of losing a child during pregnancy or soon after birth. And thank you for raising awareness about the risks of these tragedies.
Ali Mangold, current president of Garden Club, please come up. And all the past presidents that just may happen to be in this room, please come and join us too. I think we've got Mary Lewis, Kerry Patel, Beth Riley, Jan Baker, Jimmy Campion, Joy Baird, and Ruth Kirkesager all here. Thank you for. A very special proclamation on a very special anniversary. Whereas the Garden Club of Madison was founded in 1922 by 13 women, and shortly thereafter the membership increased to its present limit of 50 active members. And whereas currently the Garden Club is thriving with over 80 active and sustaining members, and whereas 1998 the club had the honor of being invited to join the Garden Club of America to share the vision of informed volunteers to working for a beautiful and healthy planet, and whereas historically the Garden Club of Madison and its members have been involved with many local conservation efforts, including the Zook Arboretum, part of the Drew Forest, and the Great Swamp Watershed Refuge. And whereas local projects include May Day cleanup, the purchase of our downtown hanging baskets every summer, and that's one of the compliments I get when people come in to visit, is the beauty of the hanging baskets. The seasonal design and plantings at the Millennium Clock right on Waverly Place are supported by the club both financially and through the volunteer work of the members. And whereas recently the club provided monarch butterfly kits to community members, funded the construction of 2 hoop houses, and raised plots for the Madison Community Garden for handicap accessibility, and planted several items in Summerhill Park as part of a long-range plan for creation of arboretum there. And whereas the Garden Club of Madison received a grant for the creation of Wildflower Meadow at the Madison Recreation Complex to restore open space, which was overtaken by invasive plant species. And whereas, in partnership of Friends of Madison Shade Tree, the Garden Club transformed the empty corner of the lot near the Madison train station to a beautiful rose garden park, which honors Madison's history as Rose City, USA. And for those that haven't taken that little step into the park as you're at that corner, it is like you go into a different world. You just step right in there, and it is a very special world, so thank you so much. And whereas the Garden Club of Madison has also secured grant funding for several projects in urban areas of New Jersey, including City Green Project in Clifton and the Growing Green Project in Patterson. And whereas the Garden Club of Madison's purpose to stimulate the knowledge of gardening, to share the advantages of the association by means of educational meetings, conferences, publications, and to restore, improve, and protect the quality of the environment through educational programs and actions in the fields of conservation and civic improvement have remained constant since the club's inception. Now, therefore, I, Robert H. Conley, the Mayor of Borough of Madison, on behalf of the governing body, hereby recognize the 100th anniversary of the Garden Club of Madison and commend your work with Madison and beyond. So congratulations for making this town so special.
Thank you, Mayor Connolly. It is quite an honor to receive this award tonight. We have been very busy, as you have heard, and we have loved every minute of it. I am very honored that the past presidents are here with me today to accept this citation, and I wish more of them could be with us today. But we will never forget our show, that you let us have our flower show here in 2017. It was an honor to have it here, and there were so many people from Madison and outside of Madison that came to see it. So thank you so much for tonight. Thank you.
Pleasure. And I know with State Senator Bucco here that he also presented you with a proclamation from the Senate. So on behalf of the Rose City, for all your work on behalf of the Rose City, making it so beautiful, we have a rose.
You got to get a picture for Alex. Thank you. Thank you.
We now move on to reports from committees, also sometimes called make the bad dash to the exit part of the meeting. We'll just wait a second as we... With utilities, Council President Landrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. From the Water Department, the fire hydrant flushing program will start the week of September 26 and last approximately 6 weeks. While hydrant flushing typically will not interrupt water service, residents may notice a temporary drop in water pressure while crews are working in their area. There's also the possibility that the water may turn a different color, but it's nothing to worry about. If you have any questions, please call the Madison Water Department at 973-966-7330. The water main breaks a system experienced during the months of July and August with the result of improper use of fire hydrants during the milling and paving projects. Please report use of hydrants to the Madison Police or Madison Water Department. Hydrants use is for emergency purposes only. Anyone wishing to have their water meter updated to the new radio readable system should call the Madison Water Department at 973-966-7330 to schedule an appointment. Okay, from the Electric Department, Thursday, September 12th, the 8th, 12 units at the Rosewood condominiums experienced power outage due to a bad transformer owned by the condo association. On Thursday, September 15th, Pomeroy Road experienced a power outage due to a squirrel. Power was restored within 30 minutes. On Friday, September 16th, Central Avenue also experienced a power outage tripped by another squirrel. On Monday, September 19th, the standby crews called out for a downed wire in the street on Lewanika Way. The windstorm had blown down a tree, which in turn took down the electric wire to the streetlights. On Wednesday, September 21st, at 10:30 p.m., the standby crew was called to repair a transformer malfunction at the James Street Power Substation, and on Thursday, September 22nd, the department was called to the Madison High School because one of the students reported wires on fire. The fire was caused by the dead branch that had fallen on the primary lines during the windstorm. And then finally, I'd like to say something about Coach Vito Lupino. My son had the honor of playing junior football under Coach Lupino. He was one of those coaches that you don't always hear about. He was tough, but he was very fair, and he got the most out of kids. When they did well, he really let them know, and when they didn't do well, he didn't berate them. And if a kid got hurt, their well-being always came first. However, I only have one argument with Vito in all the years that I've known him. He always called me Mr. Landrigan. I said, Vito, call me Bob. Everybody does. No, you're Mr. Landrigan. That's how I was raised. That's how I call my elders, which made me feel wonderful. But it just goes to show the type of person that he was. He was a good man, an honest man, and he really loved the kids. And because of him, my son went on to play football in high school and then college. So we all should have good thoughts about Vito. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for sharing that. I think he called me Bob. No, I don't. And public safety.
Thank you, Mayor. On October 18th, the Morris County Sheriff's Department will be training borough civilian employees on run, hide, and fight. This training was orchestrated by the Madison Police Department to ensure that borough employees know how to react in case of an armed intruder inside Borough Hall. Madison Police Department has applied for an automated license plate reader grant that is available through the New Jersey Attorney General's office. The money has been appropriated in the American Rescue Plan funds. Madison is looking to add to their ALPR program, in which they already have a number throughout town. This will enable them to continue their efforts to combat and effectively investigate car thefts and burglaries that are plaguing New Jersey. Finally, on September 20th, Chief Misha set up a meeting with surrounding chiefs of police from Florham Park, Chatham Borough, Chatham Township, and a member of the Morris County Sheriff's Department to formulate targeted patrols for suspected auto theft actors. This was held at the Madison Police Department. This will be a joint task force to include the aforementioned towns and patrols in residential areas that have already been secured. Madison Police Department reminds residents to do your part. Lock your car doors, take the keys out of the car, and secure your houses. Madison Police will do the rest. Thank you.
Thank you. Community Affairs, Mr. Hoover.
Thank you, Mayor. From the Downtown Development Commission and the Director of Business Development, the next meeting of the Downtown Development Commission will be held on Thursday, October 20th at 7:15 in the committee room, which is next door. It's an open public meeting and everybody's invited. The Madison Farmers Market continues through Thursday, November 17th. The market features a great selection of vendors and live music weekly. Madison's annual Fall Festival, Bottle Hill Day, takes place on Saturday, October 1st from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. This year will mark the 47th anniversary of this signature Madison, New Jersey event. For more information on the event, including performance schedules for the 4 stages, please visit rosenet.org. The 6th annual Truck or Treat and Pumpkin Illumination will be held on Friday, October 28th, beginning at 5 p.m. in the Kings Road area. Prizes will be given to the top three decorated trucks or cars and to the 3 most creative pumpkins. Proceeds will benefit the Madison Volunteer Ambulance Corps. Look for registration information on I Love Madison NJ Facebook page. From the Chamber of Commerce, The Madison Car Show is scheduled for Saturday, October 1st, in conjunction with Bottle Hill Day. The Halloween Parade and Magic Show is scheduled for Saturday, October 29th, from 12:30 to 3 p.m. Visit the Chamber's website at madisonnj.org for more information. From the Madison Community Arts Center, the improvements to the walls and window treatments have been completed. Photos of the improvements will be posted on the MACA website in the next week. Between today and the end of the calendar year, there are only 4 days where the Arts Center is not hosting an event. 3 of those 4 days are holidays. There will be a Red Cross blood drive at the center on Thursday, October 6th from 2 to 7 p.m. Reservations can be made at redcrossblood.org. The schedule for upcoming play readings is posted on the MACA website. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Finance Borough Clerk, Ms. Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. From the tax collector's office works very hard to collect taxes on every parcel in the borough. Unfortunately, we don't always collect 100%, and they go through a tax sale. The tax sale involves selling off the liabilities of property owners who have not paid their prior year property taxes. We still have a couple of properties that have not paid their 2021 taxes. They typically do pay before the tax sale, but if they don't, the liability is purchased by an investor and the property owner deals with the investor. The prior year tax bill is paid off and the borough is made whole. The process is done by all towns and it helps reduce the amount of back taxes or accounts receivables on the books. This year's tax sale is scheduled for October 6th. A special thanks to Chrissy and Hattie for all their hard work on this important project. From the Finance Department, during the last 2 years, our CFO has reported that certain revenues have been down, including court fees, daily parking fees, and interest on deposits. The first 2 revenues have not increased that much, but the increase in interest rate is benefiting the borough and the amount of money we receive on bank balances. Jim has been working diligently on finding the best interest rates he can. And as a reminder, every January, the council passes the annual cash management plan, which details the investments that can be purchased. The type of investment that we can purchase is very limited, with the focus being low risk and preservation of capital. The CFO has invested certain funds in U.S. Treasury bills and in the New Jersey Cash Management Fund. Regarding insurance schedules. Every summer, the Finance Department reviews and updates the insurance schedules with our insurance carrier to ensure that every building, vehicle, and piece of equipment is insured and that we are not insuring something that we no longer have. For example, once the Civic Center on Walnut Street is transferred over to make way for affordable housing, the borough will no longer insure the property. The borough's insurance covers all aspects, including property, liability, workers' comp, employment practices, cyber risks, officer and volunteer insurance, and alike. Special thanks to Sandy Emmerich and Sarah Murphy for their help in the process. And finally, it may only be September of 2022, but the budget season for 2023 has already begun. Next week, the administration will start meeting with the various department heads to review their operating budgets. This is the first step to build the budgets. Department heads are being asked to keep their budgets flat for 2023. In addition to the operating budget, administration is working with the borough engineer and department heads on the 5-year capital plan. We hope to have a presentation on this important document before the end of the year. I am proud that we have invested over $30 million in the last 5 years maintaining and improving our roads, critical infrastructure, and utility assets. This year will be a significant challenge with capital spending, as we may have to defer some road repairs in order to complete other important projects. And finally, the CFO has been working with the Personnel Director, Sandy Emmerich, on the various salary schedules for the budget. Almost half of the municipal budget is salaries, so it is important to make sure all the salary information in the budget is correct. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Bob Vogel, our borough engineer, notes that the bid openings for both the Green Avenue Pedestrian Crosswalk project and the Memorial Park Phase 1 Trail project will be held this Wednesday morning at 10 and 11 a.m. The Public Works Department reports that the Sewer Department saved the borough about $25,000 doing a job in-house, connecting the storm system in the area of 114 Rosedale Ave to the storm system across the street at Memorial Park to eliminate a roadway icing condition at Rosedale. Part of that job included removing 2 sections of the sidewalk on the park side of Rosedale and replacing it. That work was complete, and the Sewer Department did the concrete sidewalk as well. Public Works is ready for Bottle Hill Day. They met with Police Captain Longo and Director of Downtown Business Development, Lisa Ellis, to finalize preparations and are all set for this weekend. Fall baseball is in full swing, and Public Works is working with Recreation Director Zach Ellis on the schedule and weather-related field repairs. And Public Works has updated the safety material in the fall zones at Lucy D. and Dodge Field Playground. I'll note that there will also be an upcoming report on progress for the Dodge Field accessible playground design at an October meeting. A final note, I did have a chance to hear a little bit about Vito Lupino from Ken O'Brien, and wanted to add a personal note that I had a chance, our family got to know Vito when he was doing some sewer repairs in the vicinity of our house this summer. He was such a genial guy, really knowledgeable, easygoing, and hardworking, and I just want to add my remembrances and honor his memory. Public Works has hung bunting on the outside of the DPW garage in his memory, and I joined Public Works and all of the borough in mourning the loss of Vito Lupino. The Shade Tree Department, Shade Tree Management Board reports that 22 trees will be planted through the street tree planting program this fall. And from the Madison Environmental Commission, the Eco Garden Tour this weekend was a resounding success. Over 200 people registered. There were over half a dozen vendors on hand, organized by Joan McCarry. Joan and Bridget Daly activated the neighborhood around the new Madison Public Schools pollinator garden site, where free plants and seeds were given away. And Tom Salaki, Judy Honahan, Tom Williams, and Sarah Fisher were all fabulous stops on the tour, so thank you to them for opening up their gardens, to all the curious visitors who came to learn more about native plantings and what we can do at home. And thanks to Environmental Commission Chair Claire Whitcomb for organizing and reporting on the event. That's all for Public Works and Engineering.
Thank you, Mayor. Morris County's COVID-19 community level is currently low. This is the first time Morris County has been categorized as low in months. While our county's COVID activity is low, cases have fluctuated higher over the last couple of days, and New Jersey more broadly is currently at medium level. The new booster vaccine formulations for both Pfizer and Moderna mRNA vaccines are now available and hitting the streets. These new bivalent boosters not only provide improved protection for the earlier variants of COVID-19, such as Alpha and Delta, but also the more recent Omicron lineages known as BA4 and BA5. The bivalent boosters replace the prior formulation for boosters for those 18 years and up. Atlantic Health, CVS, Walgreens, the Essex County vaccine site at the Livingston Mall, all have begun appointments for these boosters. One note, though, Atlantic Health has not yet received their delivery of Moderna, so if you're looking for Moderna, you may want to look for an alternate site. The Madison Health Department will likely hold booster clinics later this fall when vaccines are available to them. The original 2-dose formulation and the formulations for younger patients remains the same approved vaccine. On to another public health concern, monkeypox. The number of monkeypox cases in the tri-state area and the United States continue to decline, but vaccines remain a good way for those at risk to minimize the impact of the monkeypox virus. Visit the New Jersey Department of Health website for more information on monkeypox vaccine programs. Lastly tonight, a few other programming notes from the Health Department. The Health Department will hold its normal flu clinics this fall. And they will likely be in this building somewhere based on the move to the Health Department to Hartley Dodge. Dates are expected to be announced soon and will likely be in mid-October through early November. And lastly tonight, our annual rabies clinic has been scheduled, and thanks to Ken O'Brien and the folks at DPW for opening the garage once again. That clinic will be held Saturday, December 3rd, 10 a.m. to noon at the DPW garage. More details and registration options will be forthcoming, but if you have a dog, you should make a note of that date. That's all for tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Communications and petitions.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor and Council received an email dated September the 19th from Diane Ryan of East Lane regarding the Climate Action Committee proposals. An email dated September the 21st from Chris Shore of Shady Lawn on behalf of the Friends of the Madison Shade Trees, raising concern for the process for the proposed pickleball courts at the MRC. Another email on September the 19th from Jane Klein, a Drew University alum, thanking the mayor for his efforts to save the Drew Forest, and an email dated September the 20th from Kathy Daly of West End and 20 others requesting the proclamation for Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. The following residents sent in emails in support of the proposed pickleboard and basketball courts at MRC, and that would be Matt Fastnot, Douglas Islander, Thomas Hawney, Richard Fowler, David Hargrove, and Peter Hines. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you. And now we're on to our first of two invitations for public comment. I'm also, sorry I didn't give him a chance earlier, but I'll see if State Senator Anthony Bucco wants to speak related to the proclamations that were presented, but also we have a resolution tonight to support Senate Bill 3006 that you're working with Senator Cody on, and so it might be nice for you to comment on that also.
Thank you, Mayor. It's always great to be in Madison, and I can assure you I am not stalking you. We just happen to be at some great events together as I try to get to know a new town that will be hopefully in my district in the next legislative session. As I said to you when I walked in, I came originally for the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Program, and the state has come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. And I was pleasantly surprised when I saw that you were honoring the Garden Club and the two proclamations for breast cancer and ovarian cancer. As a cancer survivor myself, I think it's critically important that we continue to raise awareness. I have fought very hard in Trenton to raise additional funds for cancer research, especially pediatric cancer research. And in fact, with the help of former Senate President Sweeney, we put more money in the budget last year than had ever been in place before for pediatric cancer research, and we continue to increase that number year after year, and that is a good thing for all of us here in the state. But tonight, I want to thank you and commend you and the council for putting on a resolution in support of the legislation that Senator Cody and I worked together on with the advice from the Morris County Prosecutor's Office, the State Chiefs of Police, and the Sheriff's Office regarding car thefts here in New Jersey. It has reached a crisis point. We are on track to probably exceed 17,000 vehicle thefts this year. Last year we had 14,000. They are increasing year over year at 20% or more thefts, and this is not a suburban issue, it's not an urban issue, it's happening all over the state, and we need to take corrective action to give law enforcement the tools they need when they apprehend these folks to put them behind bars. And the legislation that Senator Cody and I worked on and ultimately filed would do just that. For juvenile offenders, the first offense would be 60 days of community of service. Second offense would be 60 days in detention. And the reason we focused on the juveniles the way we did is because we are finding around the state of New Jersey that both gangs and car theft enterprises are going to these juveniles and recruiting them to steal the cars because they found that there's really no consequence for a juvenile on their first or second offense. And what's happening, as we saw many years ago with the drug epidemic, when the dealers were going to juveniles to bring the drugs into the schools and sell, these kids are going to get locked into a life of crime. And if we don't catch them early on the first or second offense and be able to get them into community service where we can work with them or into detention to give them a little consequence, unfortunately, these kids will be wrapped up into a life of crime. The other thing that we're seeing is that the cars are being used in more and more violent crimes, drive-by shootings, carjackings, bank robberies, armed robberies, and the perpetrators are getting more and more brazen. They're no longer just stealing the car out of your driveway. If they go to the driveway and they can't find the key, they're checking your front door. They're breaking a window. They're coming in because people often leave their keys right by the front door. And sooner or later, we're going to have an incident in a home between one of these perpetrators and a homeowner, and they're entering these homes normally armed and dangerous. So this is something that is critically important to New Jersey for our public safety and to protect our residents. And I am glad to see tonight that you are going to support this effort, because it is something that I think is desperately needed, and I am sure right here in Madison you are witnessing the same thing. I had a neighbor who had the car stolen right out of his driveway, and on my cameras on my house, the perpetrators walked right through my backyard, 3 o'clock in the morning, checked my garage door, and it was locked, and saw the neighbor's car. Unfortunately for them, the neighbor's car was open with the keys in it, but it had just been in an accident and the front wheel was bent under. So when they hopped in the car and they took off down the street, they got about 3 blocks and the wheel fell off and they had to abandon the car. But it's happening all over. Doesn't matter the neighborhood. And what you indicated before about locking your car, taking your key fob in the house, making sure your doors are locked is critically important. These folks are driving down roads and just checking to see if the mirrors are in or out. And if they're out, they're checking the doors. They're hitting garage door openers. So just be very careful and be vigilant. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. So what I'd like to do, just a little bit out of order, while the State Senator is still here, is entertain a motion on Resolution 257, 2022, which is the resolution of the Borough of Madison supporting legislation to increase penalties for car thefts and for the leaders of car theft trafficking networks.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Bob?
Yeah, Senator Bucco mentioned about consequences. You know, these kids who steal the cars, and you did mention that it's more and more young kids, they should pay the consequences. But also, the individuals whose car was stolen, you know, the insurance is going to pay a piece of it, but then they're going to be out of pocket more than likely for some money. Maybe something to consider is the parents of those children who stole the car, they should be on the hook to reimburse the people whose car was stolen. Because I know growing up, if I ever did something wrong and my father found out about it, well, I heard about it big time. And these kids, you know, they may get a couple of days in jail, a month or two, they're back on the streets again. It has to start from home, and the way that you really hit them is with money. And maybe you go after their parents to reimburse the parents of those whose car was stolen. Just a thought.
Any other comments? I would just like to add the importance of, in a way, as the State Senator recognized and Governor Cody also recognizes, there are two types of victims in this, in what we're seeing right now. Obviously, there's the victim who lost the car, but there is the victim, the juvenile, who has been recruited by a gang leader and recruited just because they can do it with a lower penalty. And if we don't address it, as has been pointed out, someone that may have a great life ahead of them will never have that chance, because they will be arrested and they will be prosecuted, or worse yet, they may be speeding down a road and go off that road and be killed. So we need to address it from both angles, and that's what this is doing, so thank you for that work. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich? Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for your work. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
And now we return to your originally scheduled program. Sorry. We will now go back to our invitation for public comment, which is the one where it's limited to items on the agenda and resolutions. If you want to comment on other topics, you'll have that opportunity at a later moment after we do the ordinance hearing. So these are the items you can comment on tonight in this session. Our agenda discussions are the Climate Change Committee update, Climate Change Action Committee update, Madison Police Safety update, and this also will be addressing the car thefts, and then the MRC multi-purpose court presentation. And these are the resolutions you may comment on. Resolution 253 is appointing Peter Frank to the position of Class 3 Special Officer, Madison Police Department. This is at $33 an hour. The Board of Education will reimburse the borough for all costs, and this is replacing an existing position under the same arrangement. Resolution 254 is authorizing release of restoration bond to the Madison area YMCA for the recent project. Resolution 255 is approving change order request for Bowler Engineering for Waverly Place proposed improvements. This is a increase of $6,550, increasing the not to exceed to $43,175 coming through operations, and this is for additional schemes and renderings being put together. Resolution 256 is authorizing special event permit for the Kings Road parking lot for Rotary Club for shredding event on October 8th. Resolution 257, supporting legislation for the increased penalties, car thefts, and for leaders of car theft trafficking, as we just noted, and that has already been voted on. Resolution 258 is approving license, raffle license for PBA Local 92. You may comment on those resolutions or the three agenda items. Again, if you want to comment on anything else, that time will be coming up shortly. As always, please try to keep your comments at 3 minutes, but we give you a 1-minute grace period, and we'll stop you at 4 minutes. Anyone wishing to comment on those agenda items, please step forward, state your name, your address, write the same on the clipboard, and again, try to keep your comments to 3 minutes. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Shannon Holland, 11 Locust Street. Thanks everybody who's coming out to support the multi-use recreation court. I'm here today to support the proposed project to build a new basketball and pickleball court at the MRC, or the Madison Recreation Complex. I'm also here to read a brief note from my husband, Chris, also known as Dutch Holland, who is called out of town on business. As most of you know, Dutch is an active member of the Recreation Advisory Committee and a founding trustee of the Madison Basketball Association. He was part of the initial group that over 2 years ago brought the concept of adding a new multi-use court to Madison. It took up a lot of his time during COVID, which kept him busy. On behalf of the Madison Basketball Association and Recreation Advisory Committee, we would like to thank the Open Space, Recreation and Historic Preservation Advisory Committee for voting to support the location of the new courts on the active recreation side of the MRC, and also to thank the Open Space for voting to approve the MBA matching grant funding from the Open Space Fund. The multi-sport recreational court project, which is fully endorsed by the MBA and the Recreation Advisory Committee, is a perfect example of the beneficial use of less than 0.2 acres of space for active recreation, and the perfect addition to the new ADA trail being constructed from Ridgedale Avenue to the MRC, and a great incorporation into the mayor's wellness campaign for Madison. Based on this support, we would like to employ the mayor and the council to further support the project by agreeing to move forward with the planning and funding of the project for construction of the court to begin in the spring of 2023. My husband and I are both active and avid pickle players, and very happy to see the growing community of pickle players in Madison rise exponentially since COVID. As an example, the Madison 1889 Team Reach group has now reached 862 registered players. And I myself am a pediatric nurse practitioner at Morristown and healthcare professional. I've seen firsthand that there's a need for active, positive recreation. If COVID taught us anything, it's that we need to get out of our houses, stay active for our own personal, physical, and mental health. Thank you very much.
Very much. Just as a reminder, what I often ask the audience is to withhold the applause, because I know it's a positive reaction, but all of a sudden you're the first speaker that doesn't get applause, and then it's not so positive anymore.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Tom Harrell-Lamputis. Nice to see everybody here. I think that a lot of the people who attended tonight were actually pleased to hear all the proclamations and hear about all the good things happening around the community. And also, you know, everybody wants to say something nice about Vito. He was definitely a Dodger through and through, and everybody who ever met him knows that. So it's great that you'll do something for him with the flag on the day of his viewing. I want to get up here for a minute and talk about the new Madison Recreation Complex multi-use pickle basketball courts, and also to thank Mr. Holland, Mr. Deneen, who's here now too, and Mr. Burnett, you, Mayor, Bob Vogel. A lot of people put quite amount of time into getting this moved forward. And some of the council people here too. Bob's been very involved. John, in the beginning, it's taken a long time. It shouldn't have taken that long, from my perspective. You know, you have a wellness campaign in the community. It's not just for the youth of the community, it's for the adults. And we know that the only adult activity we really offer the community now is walking, unless you want to go play pickup basketball or you're going to go play soccer at the MRC. So this is an opportunity for us to keep the adults in the borough, to keep the adults active, social, and it's not just an adult activity. There's families that play, there's children that play. So whatever transpired to get us to this point, at least we're here now. Hopefully we have full support from the council to move forward. And I've said this to you before, I don't think we should stop here, but that's for another meeting and another time. But at least we'll be getting this moving forward, and you can please a lot of people by showing them the support. The taxpayers are all here, and they definitely want to see that we are concerned about adult recreation and adult activities just as much as we are with youth activities. So thanks for helping to get this through, and thanks to Dutch for sticking with it for so long. It's been a little challenging, but I'm glad that we got it this far.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else wishing to comment, please step forward. Tom? Another Tom?
Another Tom? I was going to wait until after the presentation, but I'm a social studies study buddy tonight with my son, so I got to get back.
Yep.
My name is Tom Salaki. I'm a resident 1 Fairwood Road. Good evening. I'm actually here tonight to express my concerns for the selection process used to locate the proposed pickleball and basketball court. First, let me say that I'm a huge proponent of adding courts. This is not me saying I don't want courts. My wife loves pickle. My wife forces me to love pickle. So I'm a huge fan of adding. My concern is for the process that was used to select the location of the new pickleball and basketball court. I'm speaking tonight not as a member of the Shade Tree Board or a former chairman of the Parks Committee, but rather as a citizen of this town and as a licensed landscape architect. I believe the process to select the site was done so in a subjective manner, rather than objectively through a third-party assessment. As a landscape architect, it's easy for me to speak to this. My professional opinion is that there were limits on the site selected, as well as there was lopsided analysis of those sites that were selected. I understand that individuals organizing this application have put a ton of time. I'm not questioning that, right? 2 years, I think you had mentioned to us, they've been talking about it. My concern is that in that 2 years, was a professional third party reached out to assess the parklands, right? We have a lot of parklands. Or was it this assessment done by those individuals who would like to see the pickleball court in a certain location? So usually when a project like this comes about, a firm, like a landscape architecture firm or an engineering firm with a landscape architect department is hired. Why? Because they have been trained through higher education and professional experience to fully assess available land, provide objective analysis of this land, and then locate and design the set amenity based on that analysis and community input. They have no agenda other than to provide the best site and design for the client. I'm going to skip ahead because I'm trying to stand under 3 minutes here. As I have said, the process used to eliminate and approve appropriate locations was done so in a subjective manner, and therefore leaving out many alternatives, most of which may have been more cost-effective and significantly more environmentally sensitive. As an example, Bailey Ellard Park along the train tracks and equally isolated from residents was eliminated due to noise and light. Memorial locations were eliminated due to disturbing pool use in proximity to the dog park. However, the rest of the park was overlooked, including the non-essential lawn area adjacent to the Red Barn ice rink and the far end of the 170-space parking lot at the pool, which is full perhaps 2 to 3 times a year. I have submitted this design recommendation as an example to both Open Space and to the Mayor Connolly via Shade Tree Board. I should also say that Delbarton Park has this beautifully new asphalt paved surface that the town did last year. It was a long time coming, and it happened, but there are no pickleball lines painted on that court right now. So I know we couldn't have lights in that location, but 3 pickleball courts with no lights is better than none. And so lastly, I'm concerned that the location of the court and the price tag of $160,000 taxpayer dollars was perhaps approved by just 3 open space members during the last vote. Of those locations, this might be the costliest due to the removal of existing forests, grading, stormwater management, replanting of trees, and new accessible pathway and lights. I believe that the system for making changes and improvements in our parks is maybe not working properly, but I also have a lot of faith in our borough. I've seen the town become an example of environmental stewardship with the guidance this past few years of Rachel on the board and steering a lot of our decision-making and thinking about the environment when we think about our decision-making. So again, I fully support courts in this town. I think we need them, and I think we need them soon. I just want to make sure that a proper, responsible, both fiscally and environmentally decision is made in allotting this money. Thank you.
Thank you for all your work, Tom, and on the committees, and he's ready to help out.
Hi, my name is Lisa Morrow, and I live at 218 Central Avenue in Madison. And some of you may know me from, I'm usually called the bike swap lady. So I've had a lot of bikes from you guys donated to me for the bike swap that we've had going for the last 15 years, recycling event here in Madison. So thank you for that. I'm really here just to talk about the advantages of having pickleball in our town. I also was a member of the Madison Education Foundation with Diane over there for many years, and we decided during COVID to do a pickleball tournament. And our tournament sold out in 3 days, so it turned out to be a pretty good idea. And then last year we did it again and doubled all the money that we raised for the Madison and public schools for the pickleball tournament. We went from $5,000 last year to $10,000 this year. So it was a great boon for Madison public schools. I'm really just here to talk about pickleball and just to talk about the positive health benefits and mental health benefits from playing. I'm thrilled, and I think a lot of us are really thrilled with all the great courts that we have in Madison. We are very lucky, and thank you so much for them. They have been a terrific, terrific, terrific addition to our town. Just want to say that I think it would be great to have basketball and pickleball in addition. I think it's a great, wonderful, positive social sport that everyone can play. It's not exclusive, and it's inclusive, and anyone can do it. And I hope to see everybody out there to play eventually too. So I'm in support of, just more pickleball courts and basketball courts in our town. I think it'd be terrific. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Peter Boyd, and I live at 25 Norman Circle in Madison. I've been in Madison since 2003. I've also coached in Madison for 10 years, and I am somebody who rarely comes to a meeting like this. I would never do it. The last time that I actually participated in a debate like this was when the MRC was created. Huge discussion about where it should be, if it's the right spot, et cetera. And Don Links asked me to get involved. Everyone knows Don Links, and I did. And I know that there's lots of, I'm also a friend of Chris Holland's, and I've heard about this process for 2 years. And I know that there's been a lot of debate about where to put the facility, whether or not one spot is better than another. But I do know that sometimes you have to make a choice and go forward if it's the right thing. And I have confidence in the town that if this is the site that's chosen and you approve this, and I support it, that it'll be done well, and it'll be a great addition to our town. And that's it.
Anyone else wishing to be heard, please step forward. Seeing none, I close this part of the meeting. We move on to our agenda discussions. Our first one is update from the Climate Change Action Committee. Rachel?
Thank you, Mayor. Talking about climate is fraught. It's a subject that provokes a lot of anxiety and questions, and so I always appreciate the opportunity to address those questions and have meaningful, fact-based conversations about climate change and what we can do about it. So tonight's update is a combination of good news and bad news. There's more good news than bad news, so we'll get the bad out of the way first, and it probably won't surprise you. Climate change is here. Climate change is making our extreme weather more frequent, severe, damaging, and dangerous. And there's more bad news. This warming isn't going away. Human actions to curb climate change will not reduce global temperatures because the amount of energy we have dumped into our atmosphere and oceans is here to stay for decades. So the most important thing we can do is slow the rate of rising temperatures, because every fraction of a degree matters to mitigate risk and devastation. We are already spending today's tax dollars to repair the damage of climate change, including $742 billion on weather and climate disaster events in the last 5 years across the U.S. Climate change is costing us dearly. Every sliver of a degree of warming that we can avoid will save lives and reduce damages. That's bad news, but now the good news. The most important driver of climate change is human action. We have our hands on those levers to accelerate or decelerate. We have the power to decide and act. And the really good news is that the great clean energy transition is officially on. Utilities are gearing up for a big wave of renewable power development to replace coal, gas, and oil. And industry is gearing up to produce the clean, healthy, smart machines that will run on renewable energy, helping us avoid the health, safety, climate, and economic risks of gas dependency. The Inflation Reduction Act cuts U.S. emissions primarily by making clean energy cheap through tax credits, grants, rebates, and loan programs that will make it easier for households, businesses, industries, state and local governments like ours, and utilities like ours to electrify and adopt clean energy, clean fuels, and clean vehicles. The IRA, which is fully paid for through a minimum tax rate for billionaire corporations, will drive the first sustained decline in demand for oil and methane, also called natural gas, in United States history. The passage of this bill marks the beginning of that trend, and it will not be the end. So, the Madison Climate Action Committee has undertaken a nearly year-long effort to understand the coming changes in New Jersey state and now national climate policy and how Madison can be poised to respond. Following the April 27th progress presentation I made this spring, the committee has met with Borough administration, department heads, Borough staff, the Board of Public Utilities, and other consultants and stakeholders to understand how the borough can pursue climate action strategically to save energy costs and reduce emissions. We also received emails and listened to comments and questions from residents at council meetings that we have incorporated into this information gathering phase. Since we've learned so much and refined the committee's work a great deal in the last 5 months, I'd like to give an update on our findings and address some of the concerns that have been voiced, which have been focused on gas appliances, solar panels, and roof permits. Here are the definitive answers. Through the nationwide industrial and clean energy changes that I've mentioned, there will be a reduction in the use of fossil fuels to heat the air and water in all buildings. Madison is not driving these changes. Gas appliances in Madison homes and businesses will not be limited, prohibited, or penalized. The emphatic answer is no. The Climate Action Committee does not recommend that Madison impose limits or rules about purchasing or maintaining gas-burning appliances in homes and businesses. The Volunteer Climate Action Committee will aim to provide information to residents and businesses about the cost savings and clean air benefits of electric equipment and appliances, so that when older equipment reaches the end of its service life at the natural rate of replacement, residents and business owners have the information they need to make an informed choice for replacement. Solar feasibility studies for rooftop solar have been mentioned. We learned through our due diligence that the state of New Jersey considers roof replacement of a single-family home to be, quote, ordinary maintenance, not requiring a permit. We also learned that the state disapproves of unique municipal permitting or construction code requirements, instead favoring statewide standardization. So, solar feasibility studies for rooftop solar will not and cannot be required for roof permits. The borough may only act to encourage solar adoption and improved energy efficiency, not require it. For an example, you can check out the new solar landing page at rosenet.org/solar to learn about how Madison is encouraging residents to find out if solar energy is right for their home. I'll give you an example. In my case, our family has solar panels that were installed in August. They were just activated last week. And in 4 days, we have generated more energy from my roof than our home has used. So we're now exporting our homegrown, forever-free energy to the grid and slashing our electric bill. By electrifying, we keep the power in our community instead of sending dollars to enrich shareholders at PSE&G or to foreign interests who control fossil fuel markets and rake in record profits while depriving us of energy security and independence. The Climate Action Committee has worked really hard to uncover as much information as possible in the last 5 months, which has helped to clarify what is feasible and desirable and what is not. I count myself a lifelong learner, and the Climate Action Committee volunteers are curious, hardworking, smart, and always eager to learn more and share that knowledge with others. And so I thank the mayor and council for the opportunity to give another progress report tonight. And in future updates, we will share more information about the cost savings, federal incentives, and bottom line rationale for switching to healthy, high-efficiency electric equipment and appliances. We look forward to making another presentation later this fall. Thank you, Mayor.
Any comments or questions from council?
Yeah, Rachel, first of all, I like what you're doing for a very simple reason. You're not requiring people to do these things. You're giving them the information so they can make an informed decision. And let me tell you, maybe it's too late for me to see the benefits of what this committee will do. I do it for kids. They're the ones who are going to benefit from what we do today. You know, it's easy to look the other way and say, it's not going to affect me, blah, 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 blah. If people think back to when Beijing held the Summer Olympics and they had to shut down companies because of the air pollution. If you've ever been into New York City and you get into a traffic jam there and you have to inhale the garbage that's in the air there, and then you come out here and you see the difference. It's about time that people start to really take a hard look at what we're throwing into the air and what we're breathing. You hear about cancer clusters, tuberculosis, I mean, all these diseases that we shouldn't be having now, but we have them. Why? Because of, let's face it, for years we took the easy way. Buy a gallon of gas, put it in your car, burn it up, and buy another gallon. Well, you're breathing that in. So I like the fact that what you're doing is you're providing good information so people make an informed decision. You're not making it a dictatorship where you have to do this and you have to do that. But me personal, I'll do it for my kids. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Rachel. I do just want to say I appreciate, for those of us that are interested in the climate, I volunteered several times in a meeting to be part of the committee, and then due to personal items have not really been as involved as I'd like, or at all, to be honest. But that are excited about it and know that we need to make some changes, but are not quite ready to make that leap. Having the sources, I just pulled up because I had not seen it, the solar page, there's a whole bunch of information there. That's just information. So I just appreciate the clarification of information versus requirement, and that you're investigating it and helping those of us that are almost there but need a little bit more encouragement to get all the way there for whatever reason, to be able to learn about it very easily should we so choose.
That's exactly the idea. Thanks, Deb.
John?
What they said. First of all, what they said. Second, for clarification and for us to understand, who's on the committee again?
Sure. So I'm the chair of the Climate Action Committee, and the members are Kathy Cacavale, Mary Ellen Hennessy-Jones, Lisa Jordan, Kirsten Wallenstein, and Peter Fried, whose name you hear quite often when we talk about EVs and solar panels in Madison.
Right. Yeah, very qualified people, very competent people, very hardworking, all of them. I really appreciate the work that you've done and will continue to do, and I look forward to more presentations, okay? And hopefully it will result in the citizenry taking some action, okay? But
Thank you,
without
John.
commands. So thank you very much.
Any other comments?
Rachel, I just want to say, kudos to you and the committee for your work. So often in what we do here, we often try to shoehorn our own perspectives into things, and I think it's great that we're all learning as this process goes along. And it's not how can we get the thing that I thought was true in January, right? But instead, moving along, learning together, and sharing that information with our fellow citizens. And I think it's great that, certainly some of these things would be the higher order. But recognizing what we can and can't do, I think, is also important. So thanks so much for your work and continuing to beat the drum. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Maureen?
So Rachel, thank you so much for quarterbacking this. Madison has a pretty good track record in terms of taking actions that improve our climate. Peter was with the charging stations and things like that. So thank you for identifying ways that we can improve the clean energy use in the borough.
Thanks, Maureen.
I'll wrap up then. Again, thank you for the update and the importance of education in this process. As you said, that climate change is real, and we see it every day, and to ignore it or wait for others to take the lead will only hasten the disasters that will be thrown on this. Weaning off of fossil fuels, we know the impact on climate. We also know, and with what's going on in Ukraine, that what that money can be used for. We also, it's easy to argue about, as Ian is bearing down on Florida, saying, well, Florida gets hit with hurricanes all the time. But again, they are getting stronger more often. And then if you think about Fiona, I never thought I would worry about
the Christmas tree farm I buy from in Nova Scotia being hammered by a hurricane. But that is what we are seeing, is weather events that happen in areas that never happened before. And in that, the DEP ran a workshop last week. I was unable to attend, but again, it was the topic was the cost for local government on addressing climate change issues, and the cost will be substantial. So we can work together.
Since you mentioned Florida, I'll share this fact with you. The worst-case scenario that the NOAA has for sea level rise, at least at the end of 2018, was that by the end of this century, it could be as high as 10 to 12 feet, factoring ice melt and continuing heating. The mid-case scenario is 1.5 to 3 feet by the end of the century. But here's where New Jersey and Florida come in. According to Zillow, if we experience 6 feet of sea level rise, $882 billion worth of real estate will be underwater in the United States by 2100. New Jersey is second only to Florida in terms of real estate that will be lost to the sea, with $93 million worth of real estate underwater. We already have sunny day nuisance flooding and all kinds of inland flooding in our streams and rivers when we're hit by these torrential storms like Ida that we had to pump out 70 basements here in Madison last fall. So the threat is real and it's in our backyards. Thank you, Mayor.
Right. And we will now shift to the next agenda item. Our police chief and Commissioner, we got Captain Longo here. Update. Thank you for your patience. A lot going on today.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First, I wanted to thank you for Resolution 253 that's on the agenda tonight. We look forward to having Peter Frank join our ranks to strengthen our school security initiative. So I want to thank the governing body and administration for allowing me to come and provide awareness on what the police department is doing to combat auto theft and the more serious crimes that are associated with these criminals. Following Mr. Martinez, who's here tonight, standing in front of the council and describing the fear that he felt on September 2nd when his burglar alarm went off and individuals entered his residence, I felt compelled to discuss what we are experiencing in law enforcement. You know, Senator Bucco, who had spoke earlier, had touched on it, and how we are working to thwart these actors coming into town and committing these crimes. New Jersey is experiencing auto theft at an all-time high. I've never seen a crime increase like this in my 20 years in law enforcement, 20 plus years in law enforcement. Now, since we have educated the residents to lock their car doors and remove their keys from their vehicles, we are seeing the criminal element upping their ante and entering homes to look for those car keys, as we saw on September 2nd. We see this, and we also have upped our ante and our targeted patrol. So a little bit of history. Auto theft is not a problem just concentrated to Madison. As we all know, this is a problem in our state, but especially in a town like Madison, which has high-dollar neighborhoods where high-valued vehicles are present. Stolen motor vehicles are being used to commit other more serious crimes like robbery, carjackings, and homicides. We are seeing these individuals operating in stolen motor vehicles, entering our town and surrounding towns while shopping for other vehicles to steal. Some interesting stats. To date in 2022, Madison has had 8 vehicles stolen and 73 stolen vehicle-related incidents. What I mean by that are the vehicles that come into town that hit on our ALPRs, which are automated license plate readers, which I'm going to discuss briefly in a few. Motor vehicle pursuits, suspicious vehicles, attempt to stop vehicles, stolen vehicles, and vehicle break-ins, and etc. In Morris County this year, 218 stolen vehicles to date have occurred, compared to a 12-month total last year, which were 300. So we're on track to surpass those numbers at the rate that we are going. Statewide, in New Jersey last week, in a 5-day period, there were 120 stolen motor vehicles. and only 36 of them were recovered. So recent cases I'm just going to touch on, and this is during just the past 3 weeks. Just this past Friday, September 23rd, our agency received a call at 5 p.m. So it's not in the middle of the night, it's not 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, this is 5 p.m. 3 males that were in the Madison Plaza pulling on door handles. Patrol responded very quickly, located the 3 males who were identified by witnesses. They were placed under arrest. The interesting part of this is one of the males had a lengthy criminal history, the other 2 did not. The individual who did have a lengthy criminal history was to include an arrest and a charge for possession of a handgun, and he was also currently a suspect in a carjacking that occurred in Elizabeth just recently. On September 12th, patrol officers were alerted to a stolen vehicle in town on our automated license plate reader on Park Avenue. The driver was subsequently located on Park Avenue. Individual was placed under arrest. And in response to the residential burglary in Mr. Martinez's home on September 2nd, our agency, you know about the case, he had spoken about it last council meeting. Our agency is currently working with Union County towns where an identification may be possible on one of the actors, and we do have a person of interest. However, the case is still fluid, and we are actively working on it as we speak. There's many more cases to note. I know I have a couple minutes here. So what are we doing to combat this trend? I want to educate the residents. We have increased daily visible patrols that are concentrated to the areas that we are seeing thefts occurring. Patrols are deployed in a strategic manner in the areas during the times and days that thefts mostly occur. And this information is supplied by the Sheriff's Department, their Trends and Analysis Division, along with detectives from our agency. Patrols have routinely observed suspicious vehicle in residential areas. This is on a daily basis and have resulted in an attempt to stop that vehicle or washing them out of town. Patrol on a daily basis, we conduct our residential patrols. I'm sure residents, when you see us, we have upped our residential patrols, and we look for the open car doors, the open garage doors. We stop and secure them and notify the residents. So we're also doing our part to assist the residents in securing their houses. So a little bit about technology advancements. Madison has spearheaded a automated license plate reader program in conjunction with the Morris County Department of Law and Public Safety. Captain Longo is behind me, was designated as the lead of this project, and he's actually currently working hand in hand with the Director of Law and Public Safety for the county. Currently, Madison has 12 automated license plate readers deployed. I can't tell you where they are, but they are around in town, they work, and 64 of them have been deployed countywide. This is expanding weekly with a number of cameras. And this project, I want everyone to know, started on the second floor of our police department headquarters and is an invaluable tool in working auto theft related cases. So this data that we get, it's shared between Morris County agencies who participate in this program. Most of our surrounding towns, the Chathams, Florham Park, Morris Township, several other towns in the area, East Hanover, are involved in this program, and we share information on a daily basis. Our dispatch center right here in Madison monitors the ALPR hits 24/7, 365 for these surrounding towns. So when a stolen car enters the town, that information gets broadcasted to our patrols, and we act on it. We also have live 911 that is being installed in our vehicles, in which that is when a 911 call comes in and our dispatch takes that call, it's actually being voiced over on the MDT in the car. So our officers are hearing that real time. So if there's a 911 call that our resident says, hey, you know, we have two people entering our car, our officers are hearing that live time, so they don't have to get dispatched. They're on the way there. We had just implemented this just recently. This will reduce an already fast response time. So to close, we have interagency team efforts, Madison PD, and surrounding chiefs of police and agencies. We met last week in our EOC on the second floor of our police department to join forces to implement a task force to continue to target auto theft suspects and increase patrols in designated areas of towns. These forces will be deployed in a confidential manner following the data supplied, as I stated, by our friends at the Morris County Sheriff's Department. We have ongoing working relationship with local, state, federal auto theft task force divisions where ongoing intelligence is shared and analyzed and pushed out to our patrols. So lastly, what can the public do? And I know you hear it a lot, but remove your key fobs and garage door openers from your vehicles. Lock your doors to your cars, lock your doors to your houses, close your garage doors. Further, being vigilant to report suspicious activity, as on Friday in the plaza. Passerby noticed an individual checking doors, contacted us immediately, and we were able to apprehend the individuals. And obviously, we don't want you to approach any suspected actors because they are considered armed and dangerous, but to just call 911. And lastly, just feel confident that the Madison Police Department, our officers are out there and we're doing everything we can to keep our residents and visitors safe. We're working on it daily, and we won't, stop working on it till hopefully we don't have this problem anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and appreciate your leadership right here in Madison, but your leadership in the county and bringing people together to.
Thank you.
Because we can't fight it alone.
Yeah. Thank you.
Together. Other comments, Deb?
Just a couple. First of all, I've seen the uptick, and I know for me at least, it's also made me slow down a little bit. So hopefully it's got a double-edged benefit there. But I have seen you guys out, which is great. And I see on the Florham Park, they post in West Orange, where I teach, I'm in all their groups, and they're posting about the car thefts as well. Mm-hmm. My only question is, with all of the stuff that you're doing that's excellent, what is the policy on police chases, police car following? I think you used the term washing them out of town. What procedure do our cops follow?
The last thing we want to do is pursue a vehicle and create a unsafe situation. However, when a vehicle is ran and it's a stolen motor vehicle, that falls under a reason to stop the vehicle. At times when we attempt to stop them and they speed away, once they're out of town, we would radio it to surrounding agencies and we would pull off, and that's the end of it. And we would follow up at a later time through our investigative means, through the ALPR, and coordinate with surrounding agencies.
Great, thank you.
Questions or comments? John? Oh, no, that was just a wave that all is good, yes. Well, thank you again, Chief.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was a little slow on the trigger here. So I did not know that we had 12 ALRPs in town. That's quite a lot of coverage, and I understand that the idea is, as you say, to flag stolen vehicles. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about what information is captured by the readers. Is it pooled and shared with, other agencies? Who has access to the information, and how is that private data used?
Yeah, the data that is recorded is housed in the Morris County Department of Law and Public Safety. It's strictly for investigative means for stolen vehicles. That would be the only reason that we would even get alerts to it.
I see. So it's Morris County that flags a license plate, or is it Madison that flags the license plate?
Joe, you might want to. Joe's spearheading the program.
The database is going against it depends. There's several databases. It's all done by the state police. Like stolen cars come from New Jersey, DMV, and that's all we're looking at. There's other databases we can have alerted. We don't. We're just looking primarily at stolen cars, not even at stolen license plates. So to conduct a search on that, everything is governed by Attorney General guideline, meaning if I conduct a search for a plate, you have to put in a tracking code, a disposition, and like an IR number. So There's definitely checks and balances. You can't just go on there randomly, oh, let me check out where this car is and whatnot. So any search is recorded on the back end and tracked, and again, that's all in accordance with the AG guidelines. But the databases are coming from like the state police stolen database, and certain databases the state police will manually enter at the ROC, if that makes sense, which is the Regional Operations Intelligence Command Center.
Okay, thank you. So do we have internal rulemaking about which databases we seek information from? I understand from your very thorough response that we're only looking for stolen cars, but it sounds like, in theory, we could do any kind of search we wanted if we didn't have some guidelines in place for, maintaining privacy or trying to safeguard civil liberties. So what's the process for, getting access to that database? If, would that be a rulemaking thing that Madison Police would do, that you would consult with the county on? Would the Borough Council have any understanding of how we use that information? I think members of the public would be interested to know how we come to the decision about what data to access and why.
So like those searches are governed through Attorney General guidelines, like our pursuit policy is derived from the Attorney General guideline. We have to meet that standard. In the databases that the alerts come up on, again, any searches involving that has to adhere to the Attorney General guidelines. So we could write whatever policy we want, but we have to meet the minimum standard of the Attorney General. So we can't arbitrarily do what we want and have a database where you can just put in a license plate and search arbitrarily. It's got to be done with a proper audit trail. Otherwise, you're not meeting the standard of the Attorney General guideline.
Okay, thanks, Captain.
Makes sense? Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Very, very helpful, and hopefully not only the public that are here, but our residents will view this and will be reassured as to what's going on and how we're working together.
Thank you.
Right. We will go on to our last agenda discussion, and Mike, there we go. So I don't often do presentations, but it's my turn, so I'm going to do it. But it's actually, I am presenting this for multiple reasons. One, I've been working with the team all along from early design, also early in the pandemic when we were looking at the pool, coordinating efforts. But the other thing I bring to the table is my career with the YMCA as an expert in recreation facility design and construction, which the latest YMCA expansion, I oversaw that design and two previous ones to that. So if we go to the next slide, and a lot of this, I'll go through a lot of these slides fairly quickly, but again, some of the public are seeing this for the first time, and even some of the council members. But so the MBA is one of our partners in this project, as has been mentioned, and you don't hear much about the MBA. You see more of the Little League. You see the Little League parade, and so you get to see the number of children involved in Little League. But with 600 plus youth, it matches up close to Little League. It is a Madison Recreation affiliated program and supports competitive and recreational basketball. And they do go year-round. And interestingly, their facilities, despite the fact that they are comparable to Little League, they have very few courts compared to the fields for Little League. Next slide is just a little more about you can see rec program, travel program, and the coaching of the give back. And as we go into this, this is one of our most vetted projects we have ever presented, as it's been, as you've heard, discussed for 2 years, but also reviewed by multiple committees, as it should be. And I think this sets a tone for future projects along the way. And the next slide. And this is just the pickleball. So there is not technically a Madison Pickleball Association, but there's certainly a well-organized group, as Laura mentioned before. And a lot of towns are playing catch-up at this point. Most people think that pickleball was invented a few years ago. It actually goes back to the mid-'60s. But as baby boomers' knees and shoulders are giving out, they're looking for other things to play that are less impactful, so that's where we are. And some of the facilities that have been put in, Morris Township, we've been compared to that, has dedicated courts at Ginty Field. This is not a dedicated court facility that we're proposing. This is a shared facility, which should be kept in mind. And next slide is just a few more things that are going on. We already heard about the MEF pickleball tournament that sold out so quickly. We're involved in a new statewide league. We have 9 Madison teams involved. Next slide. So this kind of outlines the request, which is a multi-purpose court, 100 by 75 feet. I will explain why that dimension is important, at less than 2/10 of an acre. And we had 8 sites that we looked at. 6 were ruled out. It was suggested that should have been a consultant working on that, and yes, we did not use a consultant. This was all the expertise of our various committees and leagues. And the next slide, and this is a quote from Zach Ellis as far as how quickly pickleball has grown. Just a few years ago, we lined the Dodge Field courts when people barely knew what it was, and now we're then lined the tennis courts and so on, and now we're even doing more. Next slide is reviewing that process. So we, again, under two years in consideration, the council considered a funding ordinance in June 2021, but then tabled it at that time and went back to drawing board. So presentations were given and input were sought from Open Space, Shade Tree, Environmental Commission, Parks Advisory, and Recreation. And what we asked each of those committees is to look at the project through their filter that's defined by their mission. So, for example, Shade Tree certainly would be not looking at the courts as, is that the best place to play pickleball? They'd be looking at the courts as, what is the impact on the shade trees of Madison? Environmental Commission, similar, not only looking at the trees, but the impact on wildlife and maybe also looking at stormwater. While Parks and Recreation will be looking more at the program part of it. Go to the next slide. This is another area I can call myself an expert, having lived across from Dodge Field Court for a while, and if you go way back, I worked at Dodge Field Playground when we used to staff it, so I know the great multi-purpose use of a basketball court. What is interesting is the fact that you think about today's youth, and the first thing that comes to mind that they're playing video games, that they don't know how to go out. If you throw a ball out onto a field, they don't know how to get together and play a game. Well, the Dodge Field basketball court is counter to that. You will see pickup games happening all the time. It could be one-on-one. It could be 5-on-5. I can tell you that one-on-one soccer, one-on-one baseball doesn't work too well. One-on-one basketball is a far different sport, so it works very well. I shared that this was our location of our first pickleball courts. We were only able to put 2 courts in there. They are rarely used because it's in conflict with the kids. They can be used during school days, early Saturday, Sunday mornings, but even that is a challenge. And again, as a true multi-purpose court, I've seen the kids on scooters out there practicing to learn how to ride a scooter, learn how to ride a bicycle. Previously, there used to be roller hockey going on there. Another possible use for multi-use, but you can't have roller hockey and pickleball going side by side, that's for sure. Next slide. So here are some of the sites that were looked at and eliminated. The pool, and this was in connection with the pool early on in the pandemic. We were looking at ways to enhance pool programming that may strengthen the pool operation, so we reached out to them. So there was the one site, which is the upper one close to the pool, which would have been inside their fenced area, and then the one in the parking lot. The pool was asking for exclusive use of the court during pool hours, and the site 2, which would have taken parking, we realized that with the parking demands, it pretty much is every weekend in the summer, that we would have added more parking in the main parking lot, which would have taken trees in the buffer zone along Rosedale there. So both of those were eliminated. And the next slide, we did here the Bailey Ellard. And for some of these sites, the court that is shown, including this one, is not the proper dimension, so it would actually have been bigger. The concerns here, possible noise concern from neighbors, but the distance might not have been that bad, but certainly from shady lawn might have been an issue. Limited parking. We have, when the MRC was envisioned, the concept was we would not expand lighting in neighborhoods, that we'd keep the lighted facilities in the MRC, which is remove more from residential. So that was eliminated. And that's not even talking about the programming part of it, which I'll cover on. Two options for Dodge Field. One is shown there in the outfield. Again, that's not the correct dimension, so it would have actually taken more space of the into the field. Right now, the outfield line, which is almost at the track, is about the minimum for senior baseball. So the tournaments that have been going on the last couple of weekends would not have been at Dodge Field if a court was squeezed in there. The other option was to not put in a double court, but to expand the existing courts that are there by adding a third one. That would have only probably added one more pickleball, and again, would have taken out some major shade trees. That, while there's need to upgrade the equipment at Dodge Field, one thing that people love is it is a great shaded playground. Now we'll go to the next one. So at the MRC, we actually looked at 3 sites, and this one was suggested. Again, the court dimension there is not the correct one, so if we went to the 75 feet, that would be more problematic. That is emergency access to the MRC fields, and if you have to get a rig on there for a serious accident, and it would also require quite a bit of retaining wall. So that was not considered. So these are the 2 sites that were considered. The site number 1 near the tennis courts, where we have the existing pickleball courts, and you can kind of see the lines of all the courts there right now. And it would also be accessible to the handicap accessible trails, and the concept of the court would be to have adjustable baskets so you could have wheelchair basketball in there. So, and I've already had people from the Cheshire Home asking about when the accessible trails will open up, and they were excited to hear about the possibility of a court there too. The pluses, again, going back to, the recreation committee filter, the park committee filter. Program was the biggest plus. You see adding 3 pickleball courts right on top of the 12 courts that are there right now adds a great synergy. The MEF tournament might have lasted another 3 hours before it sold out because we had the more courts in the one location. There is a dynamic of tennis is still played. So there you have the battle between tennis players and pickleball players, and by having kind of a space that can be used more for pickleball, you might be able to make more tennis courts available. Of course, the cons, the impervious coverage, 0.2 of an acre, vegetation removal, some discussion about the remoteness, but when you look at the closeness to the tennis courts, and of course we've already had conversations with the Board of Education about putting in a gate between the tennis courts and the new facility, if it were to be located there, would take away from the remoteness. And of course, it won't have license plate readers, but it would have cameras on the court. And the other site is the parking lot at the MRC, the auxiliary parking lot, so across the main lot near the turf fields. No trees removed, and minimal change in impervious coverage, potential to expand if you took over the whole parking lot to more pickleball courts or nearby. Already power there, close to parking facilities. The loss of parking is an issue, and it's we've had some reports that it's only a handful of days. Talking to Captain Longo, he was talking about just this past Saturday with the number of youth activities going on in the turf fields, that parking lot is filled. There was discussion, can you create parking along the roadway, just off the roadway as it comes off of Ridgedale? The issue, if you take a look at that, is virtually all the parking there would be under the drip line of the existing trees, which are, most of them are significant trees, and that would endanger those trees. And just a little bit of history, that 2013, we had ad hoc advisory committee for the development of the MRC master plan. It's been alluded to already. And this concept goes even to the, as a person, only elected official here right now that was here before we even owned this property, that the concept was always floated that one side would be great for active recreation and the other side would be the passive recreation. And that's pretty much what this ad hoc advisory committee came up with, and the resolution created the conservation area and also created the calling the left side, which is the south side of the road where the MRC, the turf fields are existing, and where the court could be, would be expansion of what was the original master plan for that area. The turf fields as active recreation was not envisioned to be the first and last investment in that area. And just to give a little bit more history, for those that may not know, this land was in Florham Park when Madison purchased it. Florham Park had zoning that would have allowed a office building on both sides of the road. So in the wooded conservation area would have been office building, and the turf fields would be the other office location. And offices may not have happened, but housing certainly would have gone in there if they didn't buy it. The boundaries of the towns were moved, and so that then became part of Madison. And this is just a little background on the work that was done to create the conservation plan, which has been certainly spearheaded by Stephen Stockert, creating a great restoration of the wooded area. And here is the reason, next slide, is the reason for the 100 by 75. So basically what you get are a full court basketball with two cross court ones, and you'll see this on the next slide also. You'll see 60 feet is needed for pickleball, so why are you doing 75 feet? And on the next slide you'll see that you certainly don't want the side baskets inside the area of the pickleball courts. So that's where we get to 75 feet. That pushes the side baskets out of the courts, and we get 3 pickleball courts and the 2 cross courts and 1 full court. Great flexibility. You could have cross court basketball and 1 pickleball game going on. You couldn't have 2 and basketball going on. And tree impact, this was prepared by the arborist. I won't go into detail, but there's 6 trees in total that are fair and good condition that would be considered trees under replaceable trees under ordinance. And cost estimates, we're using $180,000 as the total cost. The parking lot would probably come in at about $160,000. The tennis courts could be upwards to about $200,000, and that's including the purchasing of the 180 budget did not include the replacement trees, and so 200 would include the clearing and also the replacement trees. And just to put a perspective, on the next slide is the potential 2/10 of an acre. So there's just very little squares in each area, one on the parking lot up near the road, and then the one by the tennis courts. As with all our other parks, Public Works will maintain the site. On this next slide, no grass to mow, which means that means it's impervious surface, but there are some maintenance things to keep up the court. The goal would be to have this project bid over the winter, and that would be not until the January, because we're part of the 2023 budget. And as the committees review this, all committees had no doubt in their mind that the court is an inherently beneficial facility for the Borough of Madison, and it is a needed facility. It was just their opinions really came on what was the best way to do it. So we'll quickly go through the next. Recreation Advisory Committee preferred the tennis court location. Again, they are, as I said before, they're driven by program. Convenient to existing pickleball courts, enhancing the programming. Accessible to the new trail for the wheelchair basketball. There was concern about windy conditions at the parking lot. There is a windy area, obviously there are wind screens, so it could be managed, but no loss of parking, which would have needed to be managed. Parks Advisory Committee preferred the tennis court area. Convenient to existing pickleball courts, again, no loss of parking. There is some concern about the order of when committees did their review, and again, it's the order of the review is not that important because each, again, do it through their filter, through their mission. Shade Tree Management Board, they prefer the parking lot and certainly would prefer no tree removal. Recommended the parking be managed on peak days. They were concerned with tree damage during construction, so if it were in the tennis court area, we need to make sure we manage that very tightly. And they also recommended that we put together, that was interesting. Borough, don't worry, I'm not going to go into some abstract graph and explain all this. That the borough should, tied to this, could have a campaign to encourage residents to donate a tree to plant. And the next one is Environmental Commission. Again, prefer the parking lot area, tree removal, no displacement of wildlife, no loss of aquifer recharge, stormwater management issues, the lower cost, and as mentioned, the wind and loss of parking could have been managed. They did say that if the tennis court area is concerned, the borough is not held to the new tree ordinance, but I think we should live up to the spirit of it, so we should follow the replacement guidelines. Install a rain garden unless it would impede on more trees. And consider lights that are on timers and more wildlife friendly, so the right temperature light that may not attract moths and other wildlife. The Dodge Field courts, all our lighted facilities are controlled time of day, so that would be easy to manage. And open space recreation via vote, they preferred the tennis court location, and they had two separate votes, one for the funding, so they agreed to the $80,000 from 2023 open space, and the following recommendations related to the tennis court location was replanting trees based on the ordinance, mitigate stormwater runoff, install rain gardens if appropriate, and be extra care in the construction, so not to damage any trees that are outside the actual court area. So next steps, as I've been talking a lot, I apologize, is if we don't have a consensus on location, but at least some guidelines to go forward tonight and some next steps. One of the things that could be done if we move forward with, assuming the tennis court program-wise is a better location, is to make sure the engineer, Bob Vogel, puts together a more detailed design so we know exactly what the impact is. So we know what the stormwater management would be and what the potential for rain gardens would be. We would then do a resolution this year, within the next month or so, confirming this 2023 project. And then early in January next year, we would appropriate the $80,000 from open space and the general capital, approximately $100,000, and that's pending the updated engineering estimates. And then we'd go out to bid. So with that, I'll rest my voice and take questions or comments. Deb.
All right, I'm just going to go, stop me if you want to answer something, but I've got lots of comments and a couple of questions. And sorry, I wrote them on the slides, so I'm going to flip slides as I go. Seconding what Zach Ellis says, the Dodge courts not only always have people at them, and you talked about one-on-one. I know my oldest would go down and just shoot hoops himself. And if he happened to find people, great. If not, he didn't worry about it. I do agree, I know it came up in one of the public comments, we do need to continually be looking at our process and make sure that everybody knows what's going on and what order needs, well, not necessarily what order, but who needs to be able to look at things. The Bailey Ellard site, one of the concerns that's not listed here, I know it's been not selected anyway, but it's not walkable or bikeable for kids and adults. The MRC site, you can go all the way up Central on a sidewalk, you can go all the way up Ridgedale on a sidewalk, so kids can ride their bikes, walk, that sort of thing, and not rely on their parents to drive them, or the adults in their house. I had a good conversation actually with Chris Shore regarding the impervious coverage, and she did some initial research and then I followed up, and there are pervious surfaces that work for both basketball and pickleball, so I think whoever needs to look into that and just make sure. It sounded good, 16 years of life and all of that stuff, but I don't know anything about the surfaces to know if they actually are valid, but they seem to be. The parking lot, just for clarification, I live on Hoyt off of between Central and Fairview. That parking lot is not only full, but cars actually do park all the way up. They make their own parking on the grass. And there's the big tournament in June for lacrosse. They'll actually come down Central, they'll come down Hoyt, they'll be on Fairview because there's not enough parking. So to me, that parking lot can't be touched because it'll just make it even worse on the overflow. Just flip real quick because I thought there was one more. I do agree on the trees, with the tree impact being a concern. Based on this slide, it looks like there's 6 or 7 of the 10 trees. I don't want to say it's not a big loss because any tree is a big loss, but they are not in great condition or already dead. It's the pin oaks that are the main concern. I agree that we should look at the impact and follow the tree ordinance, but maybe even go above and beyond if possible, and plant some extra trees. And then the final, somewhere, the Shade Tree Management Board recommended a campaign to encourage residents to donate to plant a tree. I personally think that's something we should look into anyway. A lot of places do it. I know part of my bat mitzvah project way too long ago was, instead of gifts, was to have people make donations to plant a tree. In that case, it was in Israel. And that's something we could definitely look at. And the only question I have, and again, it's a knowledge thing on my part, is the rain gardens, is how would those work? How do they cost? What do they look like? That sort of thing. Overall, I support it. I support it being at the tennis courts with the accessible trail. I think it makes the most amount of sense. And we just need to make sure that we give back to the environment for what we are going to take away.
Thank you, sorry. And I think Friends of Madison Shade Tree just heard the message about a campaign, which obviously they rely on the generosity of our residents for supplying and paying for the many trees they support every year, but we can do more. And I forgot, did you have one question?
The only question was about the rain gardens, which I don't need an answer to tonight.
It's kind of the challenge right in that location is we'd have trees around the perimeter. A rain garden would be a landscaped, kind of in very basic and not technical terms, a landscape ditch that collects the water and is able to kind of filter and recharge it right back in there. You have to capture the water on site anyway, whether it's a rain garden or pits to recharge it. So it's going to be captured one way or another. Certainly, pervious surface is something to look at. One of the concerns, if it's a parking lot, you worry about the cleaning of that, which is where the rain garden comes in even stronger. For a basketball court, pickleball court, you're not worried about cars dripping stuff that is not so good for the environment. Eric?
Thanks for the work that you've done on this, Mayor, and for the other folks that have been involved for this. I think both Jim and Ray can attest that earlier this year, every other day, I was coming up with another snapshot from Google Maps going, how about here? How about here? Can't we do it there? So I do appreciate the work that's gone on. Just a quick question, though. On slide 15, it actually shows the accessible trails kind of coming up to the proposed site by the tennis courts. Is that trail part of the existing trail project, that kind of spur that comes up and back?
Yes.
So that's already as part of the plan
so
that we're doing currently?
Yep, so that split is already in there. So basically, concept is you have the wooded spur and the along the road spur.
Yep, perfect. And then the only other comment I'll make again on the trees is, I think, me personally, my default position is, can we do something that doesn't require tree removal? My first comment on the bike path extension was, do we really need to cut down an acre of trees? The number of trees here that are impacted, it certainly pains me to look at 3 pin oaks that might have to come down. They are not the pin oaks along the LA that Mrs. Twombly pointed, so that's in our favor. But I think we can mitigate that, and I think these sites have been through a pretty rigorous and probably the most rigorous process that I can think of in my time dealing with the borough, with other things that we've promised our communities over the time. Bailey Ellard won't be lit, Dale Barton not having pickleball right next to somebody's backyard. So while no site is probably perfect for everybody, I think we're quickly reaching the point of closing in on the most appropriate sites. And several people will probably disagree, but I think that's just part of the process, unfortunately. So thank you.
One quick comment before I go to Rachel is I just realized that I was speaking from a slightly different presentation than what Michael was showing, in that I did some updates during the day, and he was showing the one that I shared earlier this morning. So I think there was only one slide missing. That was my next steps, but that's what happens when you do work in Google Slides, and then you share it, you print it out and share it through Microsoft Drive. So, but anyway, Rachel.
Thanks for the presentation. I know several of us have seen it many times. People in the audience have seen it multiple times through different committee volunteer affiliations. I think this has been a real learning process. As many have mentioned, this has been reviewed, discussed, and commented on by many more volunteers than previous projects. I think that's a good thing. There was a little bit of consternation about the sense that hardworking volunteers were brought in very late to the game and no pun intended, but not given as much of a say in site selection process. And I think what that teaches us is that it would be good to formalize a kind of a timeline or decision tree for how we bring our committed volunteers into this process. I'm not talking about who gets to see what in what order, but making sure that there isn't a sense of being brought in at the last minute as a kind of, boilerplate, check the box. And, this project struggled through some, frustrating meetings where people felt like they were being included less because their opinion mattered and more as a kind of last minute check the box. Now, I know the intention was to get this in front of as many people and generate the good feedback that ultimately you captured in the last few slides here. And I think, like I said, this has been a learning process for how we can have an inclusive round next time we look at environmentally sensitive sites, which at this point in Madison's, very well-developed state, all sites going forward might be considered environmentally sensitive. So I think we can probably do better in terms of letting everyone know when they're going to be invited to comment and help them understand the lens or the filter through which they're invited to provide feedback, if that's the framework. But I think the real win here is that the feedback that was generated makes for a better project. So the fact that the location that is proposed by the tennis courts was slightly tweaked by input from Shade Tree, that the tree planting program was proposed by Friends of Madison Shade Tree and joined, I think, in that opinion by MEC. The fact that there was discussion about how we can re-infiltrate stormwater better, and overall have a better planning and engineering process with more complete specifications to be sure that we know what we're bidding, we have included tree replacement in the scope, and that we have a really good logistics and staging plan so that trees aren't being chopped up as the bulldozers come through and the earth movers have to move in. So ultimately, it'll be a better project, and I think that's a great takeaway, and we can continue to incorporate that valuable feedback in future projects.
Thank you. Yep, it certainly was we learned a lot through this process, and we have very strong committees, and they can be part of the great team to advise on these projects. Any other comments? But I sense a comfort level, maybe not 100% comfort level of the tennis court location, but with some caveats, as has been discussed. So I think what we should do is instruct our engineer again to refine the design at that location using some of the guidelines from our various committees, including the resolution that the Open Space Committee did, and this would include research on pervious surface and the appropriateness for the site, the possibilities for rain gardens for recharge, if that's if that would work on the site. The very important, as Rachel, you just reinforced, is during construction that minimizing any impact and making sure that we have a comfort level that trees are not damaged because of a bad construction plan, as opposed to just losing it for the court is one thing, losing it because of bad construction is not acceptable. Anything else that we need to capture in those guidelines to Bob Vogel?
I'll just add one thing, which is that when we think about a tournament, with dozens or 50 or more people playing, perhaps 100, I think we need to just picture, where will people hang out? Where will they sit? Are there going to be benches? Are they going to hang out and, litter and trample in the woods we're trying to preserve? So I think just thinking realistically about program beyond the people who are playing, and thinking about accommodating all the users that are going to be here at any given time, and making sure that we have a good plan to control litter, to manage where people wait for their turn to play, for spectators perhaps, or family. I think we just need to be realistic about how many people could be here and how we can plan to do that in a sensitive and well-designed way.
That's a good point, and that would incorporate the high school tennis courts, because for a major tournament you would be using both sites, and so how it incorporate it. And I think with the layout of the court, for a full court basketball game, there would be space on the side for seating, and same thing for pickleball, but don't want to lose that. So I think we've captured all those things, and we will feed that all to Bob Vogel with the goal of, if it is, it ticks all the boxes, that we would be back with the resolution to confirm the project and with the funding in 2023. All right. Thank you all on that, and we are one of our longer meetings, which we kind of expected with a very heavy agenda, but we will now move on to ordinances for hearing. Will the clerk please read the statement?
The ordinances scheduled for hearing were introduced by title and passed on a first reading at the regular meeting of the council held on September the 12th, 2022. They were posted and filed according to law, and copies were made available to the general public requesting same.
I call up ordinances for second reading and ask the clerk to read said ordinance by title. Ordinance 43-2022.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $20,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for the purchase of portable trailer-mounted message sign.
I open the hearing to the public for anyone wishing to comment on ordinance 43. Anyone wishing to comment, please step forward. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 43-2022.
I second the ordinance.
Any council discussion? Deb?
Just a quick question. I thought we were replacing a sign that didn't work, but I saw our electric sign very nicely out to help recruit firefighters. We had two.
We have two. One is functioning, one is not.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 43-2022 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. Ordinance 44-2022.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $150,000 from the Water Capital Improvement Fund for utility emergency responses.
I open hearing on ordinance 44-2022. Anyone wishing to comment, please step forward. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 44-2022.
Mayor, I second the ordinance.
Any council discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 44-2022 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. And now we're on to our second of two invitations for public comment. This is when you may comment on any topic. Again, state your name and your address. Try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, but we give you a 1-minute grace. Kathy, welcome.
Kathleen Cacavalli, 82 Central Avenue. Rachel kind of very thoughtfully made some of the points I was going to make about the pickleball courts. I'm totally in favor. If I didn't have a gippy knee, I'd be playing pickleball. I like the comment by someone who already left who said anybody can play pickleball. I'd like to pick her brain and find out how that works. But I do have some concerns. I'm glad that the engineer will be supplying a detailed design, and I would like to ask that the final design be shared with the committees who've reviewed the previous designs before it is sent out as an RFP to bidders. I also think that the 100 by 75 construct for the dimensions is significantly understated, partly because of the comments that Rachel made and that I've thought. I've been going by the Morris Township courts, which are very popular at certain times of the day by Ginty Field, and when it's very popular, people are hanging on the fences, people are walking around the outside of the courts, people are sitting at picnic benches and bringing lawn chairs, to Rachel's point. And then when I heard about how popular the tournament was, I see that that's going to be a great draw. And so the whole area, I think Bob said 100 by 75, Bob Vogel, with a 3-foot buffer around it. Well, it seems like the 3-foot buffer wasn't shown on the presentation, but it sounds like it's going to need to be more than that. The Ginty Field courts have shoe cleaners at the entrances, and they have a storage locker outside of it, much like our tennis courts have a storage locker outside of those. So all of that takes up more space. Their lights are installed outside of the courts, which seems like a good safety feature to me, because you don't want to run into a light when you're chasing a ball, whether it be a basketball or a pickleball. So all those things take up more space than has been considered in any of the designs that I have seen. Of course, that brings me to, I think the Bailey Ellard site is a really good site, because, and not on the parking where you showed it, but next to the parking in the grass area that isn't used for fields right now. And I measured, and there's a tree buffer on all 4 sides, so I don't think lights would impact any neighbors. The neighbors are anywhere between 500 and 700 feet away, and if you look from the field towards those tree buffers, you can see one house on Shady Lawn, just a portion of it, and one top floor on Sunrise. So
1 minute.
Okay, so I don't see that noise and lights would be an issue, since it's farther away than the existing fields at Dodge Field is to anything. So I did want to mention something about rain gardens, which they wouldn't be around. In my vision, they're not around the pickleball courts. They're in the lower area where we already have a stormwater issue, before you get to the exit to the parking lot. They'd be in that low-lying area. They wouldn't affect any trees. And as an example, there are 3 rain gardens already at the MRC, and there's one at Gibbons Pine. So if you want to take a look at a rain garden. And the ones at the MRC are functioning, I check them. And after, after a heavy rain, I go back 24 hours later to make sure they're doing their job. So, impervious cover.
Thank you.
Okay, am I done?
Yeah, you're done. Thank you.
Talk to me about impervious cover. Will do.
Anyone else?
Mayor, Council. My name is Dr. Kathleen Weddy. I live at 46 Green Village Road. I'd like to address the Climate Action Initiative. There's no question that fossil fuels have been a problem for the environment. They're a problem for our economy. They're being played out now on a political military battlefield in which Western Europe will have to choose between freezing to death, a collapse of their currencies, or World War III. So obviously, as soon as we can move away from fossil fuels, we will appreciate an advantage for the environment and for the health and well-being of our economy. My concern is that the majority of the electricity that comes into Madison is generated by fossil fuel. Originally, I thought that this was about 90%. I was mistaken. It's about 62%. In any case, it's the majority. So any increased demand on electricity coming into Madison will necessarily place an increased demand on the use of fossil fuels, at least predicated on the present sourcing of electricity into Madison. There's an additional issue. I understand that we are faced, every one of us, with a gigantic problem with regard to the use of fossil fuels, and therefore we should all participate in a solution. But in fact, with regard to how Madison can best contribute, the issues involve a burdensome tax on electricity for the Madison residents, as well as the cost to the citizens and to the borough to pay for the build-out, the hardware build-out of electric vehicles and charging stations and so on and so forth. So if the lessons have actually been learned with regard to the MRC deliberations, that bringing in more thorough and outside consultations early in the consideration and in the discussion, if those lessons can be brought to bear with regard to the climate change initiative, I think that if Madison can find a source of truly renewable energy, one that does not increase the demand on fossil fuels, that we will have made our contribution, and you will be in a better position to argue to the citizens that the financial burden that they will be asked to bear will be reasonable, so that the objective that is stated in trying to reduce fossil fuels is actually achieved. As the Germans say, if this is the solution, I want my problem back. So let's make sure that the solution actually is a solution. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can provide some specific information about our fuel mix if you're interested, or we could save that for a follow-up presentation.
I don't think it's necessary right now, but certainly the confirmation of the fact that for this to work, as you presented in your opening presentation about the Climate Action Committee, is the 3 stools, and one of the stools is renewable energy. And to whatever the mix is today, to be successful, for the world to be successful, it is switching to renewable energies and then powering our homes with renewable energy.
Well, you'll be pleased to know that for energy year 2022 to 2023, Madison's electricity is 57% carbon-free.
So, very important. Thank you.
Good evening. Judy Kroll, 27 Laurel Way. I'm here on behalf of Friends of Drew Forest, and I wanted to provide a little bit of an update and a little bit of a reminder. First, an update. I was on our change.org petition site this morning and saw that we had 13,996 petition signatures online, and we also have, from the Echo Garden Tour, we have 4 hand-signed petitions as well, 4 pages of hand-signed petitions. So all that means that we are well over 14,000 signatures on our petition. As you are aware, we have 15 environmental organizations that have passed resolutions in support of the forest, including locals like the Great Swamp Watershed Association and the Shift Natural Lands Trust, but we also have some very large national groups. New Jersey Sierra Club chapter has 20,000 members. They also signed a resolution. And of course, 6 additional towns and multiple environmental commissions from the region have also provided resolutions in support of the forest. I wanted to speak also a little bit about donors. Friends of Drew Forest, without really ever asking for it, were provided donations from the public at tabling events. We initially used those to offset printing costs and supplies, and then later on, we were able to use those donations to secure and commission an environmental report by the Davie Resources Group, which we submitted as part of our amicus brief in the recent legal action initiated by Drew regarding fair share housing. The Davie report proved to be really key in Judge Hansberry's considerations, and for anyone that doesn't know, and I think Mayor Connolly, you mentioned it earlier, Drew has been directed to provide a report on what portions of the forest, if any, could be developed when taking into consideration all of the environmental constraints. So clearly, the judge read the report, understood the report, and it became part of his ruling. So all of this is just by way of saying that when things get tough, and they do and they will, there are huge number of supporters out there, huge number of organizations. People really want to save this forest, and I think we want to just remember that and be reminded that we're doing the good work. We'll continue to be active. Friends is going to be continuing through the fall, attending many events, including Bottle Hill Day coming up, and we also want to thank you once again for your support, your hard work, to you, Mayor, the Council, and Mr. Cody. Thank you.
Very much. Anyone else wishing to be heard?
Hi, Tricia Coyle. I live on Stafford Drive. I actually have already experienced the climate change, extreme weather situation here in Madison during Hurricane Sandy, when a mature tree from our yard decided to become a houseplant. It didn't go well for the house or the tree. All the people were fine. But that really brought my attention to not just the effects on people, but the effects on our town. It was hugely expensive, I'm sure. I remember there was an issue with the poles for our lighting, replacing all of the power cables and things like that. But I think when I put that in the context of climate, it's not just the extreme events. I think it's also our way of life. I like having a 4-bedroom house. I like having 2 cars in the garage. And it's not sustainable, the way we're living our lives now. And one of the reasons I like living in Madison is because we are thinking about this. We're thinking about not expenses passed on to taxpayers, but investments in the future of our town, for a sustainable town, for a sustainable future. And I'm really proud of this council for taking those steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia. Anyone else wishing to be heard?
Good evening, everyone. Mayor, the council. My name is Lenore Clark. I live on 7 Oak Circle. I'm going to change the topic a little bit. I actually want to talk about public safety. have just a few comments. I wanted to talk about our law enforcement, firefighters, and first responders. I want to commend them for the amazing job they do in keeping our residents safe. They definitely deserve our thanks for their dedication and their support. One concern that I'm specifically wanted to bring up tonight is the lack of firefighter volunteers and our career firefighters in our community. At present, we have just 8 volunteer firefighters and 14 paid career firefighters to serve our community of approximately 17,000 residents. According to our Madison Fire Chief, Lou DeRosa, in order to operate safely and efficiently, we need about 25 to 30 volunteers. Yes, Madison does employ 14 paid career firefighters, but only 13 are on active duty at this moment. One is retiring and on terminal leave and will be on the payroll until March of 2023. Even in the best of scenarios, it is difficult to replace an employee with many years of institutional knowledge, and it is not easy to recruit new firefighters. I do sincerely hope that we have already started the ball rolling to hire a 14th career firefighter to replace a staff member that will be retiring in March. Mayor, I would appreciate if you could comment on where we are in that search for a replacement and whether it looks like we will be able to seamlessly fill that vacancy as soon as possible. Recruiting volunteer firefighters has been a challenge in recent years. This is not a new problem for Madison. The recruiting tactics that we have pursued in the past have not been successful in the long term. Our Madison Fire Department continues to operate with a deficit of volunteers. In the interest of everyone's safety here in Madison, it is time for us to come together as a community to make this a priority and to find a real solution to this ongoing issue. We need to brainstorm what we can do as a community to incentivize and encourage younger people to become volunteer firefighters. My question to you, Mayor, is whether you have a plan for this already. And if we don't have a plan to address it, I would suggest that this is a matter that deserves an ad hoc committee to brainstorm solutions and work on a volunteer firefighter recruitment plan until it is truly resolved and we are finally staffed with the necessary number of trained volunteers. And lastly, I want to commend the vital partnership that our Madison Fire Department has with our surrounding towns' fire departments. Their collaboration and model for reciprocal aid ensures that there is always backup when we need them. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. We are working closely with the fire chief and also looking at, some communities are very successful with volunteers and some are struggling. So looking at models that can work in Madison and reinforce our volunteer ranks. And Peter, welcome.
Okay, I'm Peter Freed, 38 Morris Place. I apologize for lengthening your meeting. I'll be quick. With regard to seeking outside expertise on our climate initiatives, the borough has been doing that. We've gotten grants from the Gardenier Foundation. We've hired various consultants, and we've briefed their findings to this group. One of their findings was that, we should be building our own renewable power sources in town, and we're doing that, and so it's going to save town money, and that goes right to what you were saying, so I appreciate that. And we're building our own renewable power sources in town. We've briefed that to this group, and it will save the town money. So, we're embarking on a program that is a program of 30 years duration, not a program to change things in Madison next year. This is something the state has outlined, and the state has outlined how it's going to have renewable power 30 years from now, replacing the fossil power. If at that time we're driving gasoline-powered cars and using a lot of natural gas, we won't succeed. But as you say, we need to make the electricity renewable. Madison's doing that, and the state is doing that. But we're doing it on that 30-year time scale. None of this is happening next year. So I just wanted to clarify that. And, so you need to do both. You need to make your power renewable, and the state is aggressively doing that, and Madison is doing it as well, as you said. And and we need to start using electricity instead of fossil fuels. And with that, I'll back off and hopefully let people get home. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Just a reminder to all that we don't want to direct messages to previous commenters. Messages should be directed to the council.
Good evening, I'm Matt Fanatin. I live at 116 Ridgedale Ave in Madison. I just had a comment on the senior center. I know it was relocated to Chatham Township, merged with their program. I'd like to see if we can get the senior center back in Madison at some facility so that seniors can have a center in Madison rather than traveling to Chatham Township. I think it's a burden on seniors to travel down to Chatham Township. So I'd like to see that done. If we can get that done, it'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. And just as not necessarily an update, but a reinforcement of, so we've negotiated a long-term lease with the Masonic Lodge as a location for senior programs. Also, our contract with the Senior Center of the Chathams, which is an independent nonprofit, is an escalating contract as they're able to start providing programs right here in Madison. We will then be paying them more for their services. So we look forward to that, and it is a great social necessity for senior programs, and there is a certain synergy of being able to provide it with multiple towns. All right, anyone else wishing to comment? Yep.
Back, man.
Oh.
Would you like to go first? Yes. Go ahead.
All right, good.
My name is Chris Shore at 31 Shady Lawn Drive, and every time I come to a council meeting, I am surprised all over again at the range of interests and special concerns that are brought to you from all parts of this town. And I am struck, I think, mostly filled with pride that there are so many of you who are willing to spend so much of your time and so much talent responding to such a wide array of things that involve a community, that you even have time to look forward to a climate change and to anticipate where we need to be in the future is a tribute to a level of imagination I actually can't aspire to. I can't imagine what the world is going to be like. And I think that people like me get paralyzed looking at the number of problems that face us and wouldn't know how to start without the help of a climate change committee like yours. I appreciate the data that you gather. One thing, speaking as a friend of the Madison Shade Tree representative, one thing I would remind everyone is that the best air filtration system, the best totally free renewable energy, the best help for climate change is mature canopy trees. And so, as completely old-fashioned as it is, I really hope going forward that we look not just at solar panels and renewable energy that way, but the preservation of the canopy that filters and cleans our air, that provides us with what water control and flood control we now have. Those are things that people can plant in their yards. They need to cherish, they need to treasure the trees that are really doing all the work that's being done now to counter climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Dennis Schreiber, Greenwich Court. I've listened to all the verbiage this evening about the climate change and the committee. I've got one question. Do you have any climate skeptics on your committee? Seriously. I think you've already decided that there's a problem that you're going to solve. And I think without a little balance, you've already come to your conclusion, and now you're going to jam stuff down our throats that we don't need. I think if you really want to be serious about this, bring some skeptics on the panel. And then ultimately, you're going to end up talking to the Chinese and the Indian governments about this, because I don't think this is going to make one iota worth of difference, other than a lot of expense for the borough and a lot of aggravation for residents.
It's an all-volunteer committee, and we take all volunteers.
And just a reminder, this committee is tasked with what is Madison's role and how has Madison addressed climate change. I think the world has already recognized that climate change is real, and climate change must be dealt with. Whether India and China join in, we all must do what we have to do. Anyone else wishing to comment? No? Okay. Seeing none, I close this part of the meeting. We now move on to introductions of ordinances. Will the clerk please read the statement?
The ordinance scheduled for first reading has a hearing date set for Wednesday, October the 12th, 2022. We've published in the Madison Eagle, posted on the bulletin board, and made available to members of the public requesting copies.
I call up ordinances for first reading and ask the Borough Clerk to read said ordinance by title. Ordinance 45-2022.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $300,000 from the Reserve for Electric Utility Substations for repairs and related materials.
Mayor, I second the ordinance.
Any council discussion?
Mayor, I'd just like to add that Madison, almost every year, with the exception, I believe, of 2020, when we had to quickly retool our budget for the impacts of COVID, has set aside money to invest in our electric utility infrastructure. So we can be proud that this council and councils before it have prudently set aside money to make these upgrades. We know that demand for electricity will continue to increase. It's expected to have increased 30% by 2030 in New Jersey. And so I think this is just a great sign that Madison is looking to the future, investing in our grid, and helping our community be resilient by making sure our systems work as best they can and be clear-eyed about the future challenges.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan? Yes. Mr. Range?
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda resolutions. Will the clerk please read the statement?
Consent agenda resolutions will be enacted with a single motion. Any resolution requiring expenditure is supported by a certification of availability of funds. Any resolution requiring discussion will be removed from the consent agenda. All resolutions will be reflected in full in the minutes.
Mayor, I move Resolution 253-2022 to Resolution 256-2022, and then Resolution 258-2022.
Second.
Any council discussion or any that need to be pulled? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
Okay, there is no unfinished business, thankfully, at 10:50. We will move on to approval of vouchers. Will the clerk please read the voucher totals?
The current fund, $342,931.65. From the general capital fund, $33,372.75. From the electric operating fund, $676,840.43. From the electric capital fund, $21,009.72. From the water operating fund, $36,561.01. And from the trust, $16,953. The total is $1,127,668.56.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan? Mr. Range?
Yes.
Right, there is no new business. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mayor, I make such a motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for your patience and joining us tonight.